Chapter 51. On the stage, Gao Yan finally finished reciting the circulation of law. The surroundings were quiet before whispers started to discuss. The students did not understand the meaning of this treatise and only knew that it quoted classics and was very gorgeous. But the Darren at the male side of the banquet understood the depth of it. This treatise looked casual, but it was able to point out the loophole in Ming Qi's laws in one fell swoop and ingeniously changed it to make up for it. For a student, it was somewhat inconceivable. The examiner on the stage did not expect that Gao Yan was really hiding his abilities. But the rules still had to be followed. Once one had doubts about the student's results, naturally one would have to test it first. Just like Shen Miao's painting previously. In all fairness, this circulation of law was more brilliant than Shen Miao's painting as it had both literary and practical qualities. The examiner then asked, just like what the treatise said, Ming Qi's laws encompass a wide area. You said that there is a need to subdivide it. How do you subdivide it? Gao Yan's heart was delighted. Other than the circulation of law in the manuscript, there was another question that was exactly the same as what the examiner asked. He was very grateful to the person who wrote the manuscript for him and thought that in the future he would give more money as a reward. Therefore, he calmly puffed out his chest and raised his head, answering according to the script. There are 3 levels, the commercial path, the official path, and the civilian path. Below the stage, historian Jing Darren was already grinning from ear to ear. He was able to reach this stage in the officialdom because he relied on the emperor's support and wide connections. But there was really no one with such ability. Luckily he had a good son, Gao Jing, who was able to help him deal with many things at a young age. Now that his second son, Gao Yan, had displayed such extraordinary abilities, he had to return to the ancestral hall to burn 2 joss sticks and pray for his ancestors. Gao Jing was smarter than his father, but he did not believe that his own younger brother would have such wisdom. Facing the examiner's questions, he was able to speak with assurance and composure. One could not possibly even bribe the examiner. Thus, he could not make up his mind. Pei Lang picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip. His hands were still slightly trembling. He did not know why, but every word that Gao Yan said seemed to be imprinted in his mind. That kind of familiar feeling made him feel ridiculous, and the anxiety in his heart could not be calmed. Su Ming Lang had just dozed off and saw that the people around him were looking at Gao Yan on the stage with an expression of appreciation. She simply tugged on Lord Su's sleeve and asked, "Father, is what he said good?" "A young talent," Father Su said directly. Su Ming Lang pursed his lips and seemed to be unable to understand. After looking around and not seeing Su Ming Feng's figure, he asked, "Why is older brother not back yet?" Old Master Su coughed softly, "Your big brother's body is weak now. He was forced to come today. Let him rest a little longer." Fu Xiaoyi heard the movements over here and glanced at Master Su. Seeing that Master Su's expression did not change when he mentioned Su Ming Feng, he then withdrew his gaze thoughtfully. No matter what, Gao Yan's battle today was extremely beautiful. He was able to deal with the examiner's questions with ease, dispelling the doubts in everyone's hearts. Without any explanation, he naturally obtained the first rank. The ranking was secondary. In the future, when Warden Jing was mentioned, apart from Gao Jin, everyone would also know that he had a young and talented second son. Gao Yan got off the stage proudly. This round of selection ended and the female group's selection also began. Feng and Ning did not go up the stage. She was already outstanding in the Qin category, and just now she had already drawn the Qin category. Since the other items were not outstanding, there was no need for her to go up the stage. Shen Qing chose chess. She was good at chess, and chess also needed to be calculated, so she was considered to have some expertise. As expected, Shen Yu chose Qin. Chapter 52. Shen Yu had always loved these things that could make her seem out of this world. Because Chen Roqiu was originally good at playing the zither, not only did she know how to play it, she also knew how to compose some songs and write some lyrics. Shin Yu had learned this skill very well. Every year she would be able to get first rank, thus every year here, it was the time for everyone to appreciate her zither skills. In the female group, once Shin Yu was there, the others would not choose the zither category to seek their own humiliation. Shin Qing naturally put in effort, and in the chess category, she got first rank. After going around and around to the zither category, the audience started to discuss again. Shin Yu walked up the stage and burned incense and bathed her hands. She was born with a delicate and graceful air, and her soft, pink robe was extremely moving. But with a shallow smile on her lips, she really had the appearance of a little fairy. She was playing Chant to the Moon. Chant to the Moon was an extremely difficult song, and it was about a wanderer far away who missed his homeland and loved ones. The beginning was gentle and melancholy, followed by intense sorrow, and at the end it made one sigh. The transition from start to finish was a test of zither skills, and it was emotional. In the previous lifetime, Shin Yu was also in the limelight of this song and was unparalleled for a while. In comparison, she was even more unbearable. Now thinking about it, it seemed that every time Shin Yu's good reputation was to step on Shin Miao's embarrassment to climb up. Shin Miao looked at the young female on the stage. Shin Yu had already started. When she plucked the zither strings, it was as if the zither strings had spirituality as it spread softly in her hands. The song was ethereal and had a charm that drifted into everyone's ears. Her fingers flew on the zither strings like a butterfly shuttling through a sea of flowers. Every turn was coordinated and natural. Feng and Ning bit her lips. Even if she did not like Shin Yu, she had to admit that Shin Yu's zither skills were outstanding. In comparison, the song that she got first rank just now was really clumsy. That was a song of longing for one's loved ones and homeland, but it made Shin Miao's fists gradually clench. Even if one were to relive a lifetime, the dead could not be resurrected. Wan Yu and Fu Ming would not appear again. This song of Shin Yu's was like a death knell of vengeance and resentment. In the ears of those who heard it, not only was there no comfort, it was filled with blood hatred. Kai Lin ran out of the banquet. He tried his best to get closer to the stage so that he could see every expression of his sweetheart. He was intoxicated by the beautiful sound of the zither, but was suddenly interrupted by the sound of someone talking. The second young lady is really unlucky. She has never been the second place, but the fifth young lady took the first place. The one who spoke was a slender maid, and Kai Lin recognized that she was Shin Yu's personal maid, Shu Xiang, and involuntarily looked over. That's right. Moreover, the fifth young lady doesn't even choose. She is deliberately going against the second young lady. Another maid said. Alas, it's a pity that our second young lady has a kind heart and has been bullied by fifth young lady in private. Didn't the fifth young lady dare to treat the second young lady like this because of the first master? Second young lady is so pitiful. She had prepared for so long, but the fruit was snatched away by someone else. It would be great if someone could help the second young lady vent her anger. For example, let the fifth young lady go on stage during the selection. What nonsense are you talking about? Shu Xiang interrupted her words. Everyone knows that the fifth young lady is not proficient in the zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. Picking the fifth young lady, isn't it lowering one's own status? I think it is impossible for the female group. If the male group were to pick her, that would be helping the fifth young lady to vent her anger. The voices of the conversation gradually became softer. Kai Lin's eyes moved as he looked at Shin Yu on the stage and had an idea in his heart. Chapter 53. Shin Yu's song ended and everyone listened as if they were intoxicated. A female with outstanding zither skills would be loved by everyone, especially when this female's looks were not bad. At least in the male side of the banquet, not to mention that the grade 1 children were too young, there were quite a number of grade 2 and grade 3 youths that were looking over here. Even though in Guangwentang, Qin Qing's appearance was a level higher, but Qin Qing's temperament was arrogant, and how could it be compared to Shin Yu's gentleness? This younger sister of yours plays really well. Feng and Ning reluctantly said, one do not know where did the zither master was invited from. Tomorrow I will ask mother to help me find a famous zither master to teach. It was the time when one was young and loved to be competitive. Just like when Shen Miao was just appointed as Empress, she was relaxed about everything, but Fu Xiuyi's heart was tightly controlled. As long as Fu Xiuyi was slightly good to other females, she would be extremely worried. The inner palace was the most troublesome and would privately trip others up and stab others in the back. She had the temperament to immediately get back after suffering a loss and thus offended a lot of people. Now, this temperament did not change at all, but there was no need to hurt herself. Speaking of which, second young lady of the Shen family is a rare beauty and talent. Everyone loved beauty and Prince Shou was also amazed by Shen Yu. He only said, "It is a pity." Others might not understand what was a pity, but it was impossible for the few princes to not understand. Shen Yu was born with a delicate beauty and infinite talent. If there was such a beautiful and understanding person by one's side, perhaps it would be a great thing in the world. Unfortunately, she did not crawl out from Shen Furen's stomach and was not the daughter of the first household of the Shen family but the third household. Unfortunately, Shen Xian, who held the military power in his hands, gave birth to an idiot like Shen Miao. Even if she looked different today, how could one's impression be changed overnight? They believed that Shen Miao's propriety today was because there was someone guiding her from behind and her heart was still that idiot who did not know anything. After Gao Yan stepped down from the stage, Pei Lang's mood gradually calmed down. It was the first time in his life that he encountered such a situation. Even though he was puzzled, he tried his best to reassure himself. At this moment, when she heard Prince Zhou's words, she could not help but look at the purple-clad young lady on the opposite side of the female side of the banquet. She held the chess piece and tilted her head as she pondered. It was too far and one could not see her gaze clearly, but one could feel the scrutiny and deep meaning in that gaze, just like when Shen Miao looked at him. How could such a person be an idiot? But people would not change overnight. Could it be that Shen Miao's previous stupidity was all an act? Why was that so? As smart as he was, he couldn't figure out what was going on. The female group selection ended with Shen Yu's singing to the moon. Shen Yu naturally took the first rank, but the her today was not happy because of this but felt somewhat embarrassed. She looked at Shen Miao, but Shen Miao was engrossed in the chess game and did not look at her at all. Shen Yu knew that Shen Miao was not proficient in the zither, chess, calligraphy and painting, thus naturally she would not be able to understand that chess game. Now that she was looking at it seriously, it was only to deliberately give her face. Chen Roqiu noticed her expression and reminded her softly, "Yuanyang, you have forgotten yourself." Chen Roqiu requested her daughter to be calm and composed no matter what situation or what happened. No matter if one was really calm or pretending, one must let others see a calm side. Once a female was calm, their temperament would be superior and flustered would not be the bearing of an aristocratic family. In all fairness, Chen Roqiu's way of teaching her children was indeed not bad and she herself also did a good job. Unfortunately, Shen Yu was after all young and had never experienced failure before, thus did not know how to endure. Hearing Chen Roqiu's reminder, Shen Yu slightly put away the anger on her face. The maid by her side, Xu Xiang, handed her tea. "Young lady should drink some tea to moisten your throat." Shen Yu took the tea and looked at Xu Xiang. Xu Xiang smiled at her and Shen Yu understood in her heart and the smile on her face became more real. She said, "It is somewhat hot. I am very interested in the selection later." Because Shen Qing had just obtained the first place in the chess competition, her mood became a bit better. She said with a smile, "This year, there will be no division between the male and female groups, nor will there be any division between the second and third countries. The competition will definitely be more intense." Originally, the selection was the one that people looked forward to the most out of the three. Because the drawing would not necessarily draw the best and the selection was to choose the best performance, then the selection would always happen between the two most outstanding people. The selection in the female group was not very intense because the females would always be amiable on the surface and also show that they did not care about the results and had an indifferent attitude. But males were different. Youths liked to use the method of comparison to determine victory and defeat. At this age, the desire for victory and defeat was the strongest, so that selection every year would be the most intense. This year's selection did not differentiate between male and female, second or third countries, and all the students could compete together. As long as one wanted to challenge someone, naturally one would be able to compete with that person. But even though it was said like this, there would not be any challenges between males and females. As expected, there was no one challenging the literary category this year, and the highlight naturally fell on the martial category. This almost cut off the possibility of females participating. Even though there was no lack of daughters from military families who knew martial arts, but females as compared to males, their strength was much worse and naturally it was impossible for them to succeed. At the males' banquet, Kai Lin was the first to stand up and walk up to the stage. The examiner asked him what was the challenge and he pointed to the bamboo stick for archery and said, "Archery." Everyone understood. Kai Lin, this little tyrant, did not know anything about the literary category, but he was considered outstanding in the martial category, among which, archery was the most outstanding. Naturally, his archery was top-notch and he had obtained the first rank in archery in last year's academy examinations. Who was the one that he wanted to challenge today? Looking at the entire audience, there was no one that was more outstanding than him in archery. Kai Lin raised his neck and suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the female side of the banquet. When everyone saw that he was pointing at the female side of the banquet and not the male side of the banquet, they were surprised, and when they saw who he was pointing at, they opened their mouths in astonishment and even stopped their discussions. He deliberately said loudly, "I want to challenge her, Xin Miao." That purple-clad young female who was immersed in the chess game raised her head and looked at the person on the stage with clear and sharp eyes. Her expression did not fluctuate and her actions did not make any mistakes, as if this earth-shattering sentence was just a casual greeting and she did not even bother to reply. Chen Roqiu frowned. She wholeheartedly taught Xin Yu, but Xin Miao seemed to have learnt to remain calm. In a distant pavilion, the handsome youth who was leisurely drinking tea sprayed out a mouthful of tea and a trace of surprise appeared on his frivolous expression. "Is the Kai family's boy crazy?" Xin Miao stood up. In the chess game on the table, there was a black chess piece that crossed the boundary and was heading towards her. The first pawn was dispatched. She picked up the white chess piece and swallowed the black chess piece before throwing it into the chess basket. "Receive," she said. Chapter 54. The autumn wind was always refreshing and elegant, but at this moment, because of the tense atmosphere, it seemed that even the fragrance of the flowers had become strong. Shen Yu covered her mouth and said with some surprise, "This fifth younger sister is a female. Why would anyone pick this?" "Correct." Chen Roqiu also said worriedly, "Fifth mother, do not force yourself. Even though eldest Bo is a general, you do not know these." Chen Roqiu's words were very clever. She said that Shin Xian was a general, but as a daughter, Shin Miao did not know how to shoot. It was fine if she was not proficient in martial arts, but because females did not like to wield swords and spears, this reason was also reasonable. But not proficient in martial arts and not proficient in literature, this was really bad. But everyone knew that Xin Miao did not know anything about the four arts, and now she had to say that she was not proficient in martial arts, which meant that Xin Miao had no good points and even Shin Xian's household was belittled. "But, the rules of this competition can't be changed," Chen Qing said with an anxious expression on her face. However, no matter how one listened to her tone, it was obvious that she was taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. "Once you are chosen as an opponent, you will have to complete the competition regardless of which category you belong to." But everyone would pick outstanding people to compete with. Could it be that fifth younger sister still have a trick up her sleeves? Otherwise, why would Kai Lin pick you? Her words were somewhat ear-piercing. But Ren Wanyun did not stop her and only smiled, eldest sister, what nonsense are you talking about? How would fifth mother know how to wield swords and spears? Fifth mother, if you do not want to go on stage to compete, second Shin will personally speak to the examiners. You are still young and on account of eldest Bo's face, they will not make things difficult for you. Even though Ren Wanyun's words sounded as if she was helping her out of trouble, but upon careful thought, it was not the case. After all, no one had made an exception on the academy examination stage for many years. Now that Shin Miao had set a precedent, one could not predict how the commoners of the Ding capital would talk about it. Moreover, if Shin Xian's name was brought out, there would be people who would say that Shin Xian relied on his merits to exercise his privileges. After all, one's status brought about benefits, but there were also many disadvantages. And she would never allow anyone to say the word no to Shin Xian. Many thanks, second Shin. No need. She stood up from the female side of the banquet and slowly walked towards the stage. The field gradually quietened down. Only the girl's voice could be heard clearly, and it caused quite a stir in the field. I accept this battle. Kai Lin's gaze flickered. He did this just to vent Shin Yu's anger. In the martial arts category, it was the first time a man challenged a woman to a competition. But he was used to being a scoundrel, and it was nothing more than being lectured by his own parents when he returned. But thinking of being able to vent Shin Yu's anger, Kai Lin was happy from the bottom of his heart. He thought that if Shin Miao did not dare to accept this challenge, he would ruthlessly ridicule Shin Miao. Unexpectedly, Shin Miao actually accepted the challenge. Not only that, but she also welcomed it calmly. Kai Lin had a strange feeling as he watched the purple-robed figure slowly walk onto the stage. It was as if she was not afraid at all. But how was this possible? Whether Shin Miao knew archery or not, he was clearer than anyone else. Those who had never practiced martial arts naturally knew nothing about it. Shin Miao might not even know how to hold the bow. Facing something that she was not good at and had never tried before, no one would not panic. She was actually able to act to such an extent? Kai Lin was deep in thought when he suddenly felt a gaze looking at him. He turned his head and met with Shin Yu's gaze from the female side of the banquet. When Shin Yu saw him looking over, she became shy and lowered her head. Kai Lin's heart swayed from the gaze. Every young man had a dream of being a hero saving a beauty. Now in Kai Lin's eyes, he was the hero that stood up for the beauty, and as for Shin Miao, she was the vicious and ugly villain. Chapter 55. No matter if she accepted the challenge or not, he would definitely make Shin Miao lose her face and put her in a sorry state under everyone's eyes. He wanted her to not dare to run rampant in front of Shin Yu. Generally speaking, the challenge segment was set by the challenger, and one would challenge in whatever way one wanted, and the one who was challenged could only accept the challenge. Because no one knew what would happen next, this round of the year was always the most attractive. Shin Miao walked up to the stage. The academy examiner who was the lead actor was also in a difficult position. Shin Miao was after all a delicate young lady, and it was acceptable for a female to challenge a male in the literary category, but it had to be a military category. One feared that Kai Lin deliberately wanted her to make a fool of herself. Today's show is very good. Prince Zhou clapped his hands and seemed to be very interested. One feared that the reputation of the first household of the Shin family will fall by 1,000 feet. Prince Jing shook his head and sighed. General Shin gained a good reputation from the battlefield, but this daughter is not living up to expectations. He thought in his heart that not only was she not living up to expectations, she was really stupid. Today it was clear that it was wrong for her to accept the challenge or not. Now with such an attitude, it would be even more laughable later on. Kai Lin proudly curled his lips. This year I thought of an interesting rule. It is too boring to honestly compete in archery every year. This year's archery challenge, I will shoot against you. You will place the fruit on your head and I will shoot you with an arrow. Afterwards I will place the fruit on your head and you will shoot me with an arrow. How about it? When those words were said, the entire audience was in an uproar. That academy examiner was also shocked. This was going to kill someone. Shen Miao was after all Shen Xian's daughter, and if something really happened to her, who would be able to bear the responsibility when Shen Xian came back at the end of the year? He quickly said, "Student Kai." Kai Lin waved his hand. "Teacher, Guangwen Tang did not specially set a precedent for a certain person. The previous rules were like this, and whatever the challengers said would be the rules." "Why? A dignified great general's daughter is also such a cowardly person." Shen Yu lowered her head and covered her curled-up lips. Feng and Ning frowned but did not know what to do at the moment. "Well said." The voice was somewhat hoarse, but it came from Prince Yu, who had his eyes closed. A strange smile appeared on his sinister face. Naturally, there is no such thing as changing the rules for a certain person. Could it be that on the battlefield, because the enemy was strong, General Shen temporarily escaped? Then it's understandable. After saying that, he seemed to find it funny and laughed out loud. Shen Miao's gaze suddenly sharpened. These people kept on mocking Shen Xian. Did they really think that she was the weakness of the first household of the Shen family? She looked at Kai Lin's gaze, which seemed to be enjoying a good show, and then glanced at the malicious mockery of the people at the banquet. The anger that had been accumulating for a long time finally burst out. Shen Miao, who had been reborn, could endure, but the head of the inner palace, Empress Shen, had a vengeful nature. She said coldly, "My father is fighting a bloody battle to protect the country. That's why we have today's splendid chrysanthemum banquet. That's why there are hundreds of flowers blooming in the academy examination." A trace of mockery flashed in her eyes. Winning today's competition doesn't mean anything. You can talk about lust after you've truly gone on the battlefield and killed people. As for the rules you set, why wouldn't I dare? Everyone was taken aback. Why wouldn't I? Your archery skills are exquisite, so naturally you would hit the fruit, but my archery skills are not good, and if I were to miss, the one who should be worried about my life is you. She smiled gently and her voice seemed to come from far away, but it was like a clap of thunder exploding in everyone's ears. In this case, sign the life and death agreement. If one is injured or dies, one will bear the consequences. Do you dare? Kai Lin. Chapter 56. The huge Yan Bei Tang was silent at this moment. The young female's back was straight. Her figure was petite, but it seemed to contain infinite power. Every move she made had the persistence to trample everything under her feet. Kai Lin was speechless for a moment. What Shen Miao said was right. To shoot arrows at each other like this, the one who was in the most danger should be him. It was because Shen Miao did not have any archery skills, and if the arrow was slightly off the mark, perhaps the arrow would pierce into his head. But how would Kai Lin think so much? His thinking was simple. As long as he shot the arrow first, with Shen Miao's temper, she would be so scared that her legs would go soft and she would beg for mercy. He would then play around with Shen Miao, and as a result, Shen Miao's face would be lost, and naturally he could help Shen Yu vent her anger. As for what would happen after that, Kai Lin did not even think about it. In his heart, Shen Miao would naturally be so scared after he shot the arrow, so how would she have the strength to shoot at him? Moreover, a female who had not even pulled a bow before, perhaps she would not even be able to pull a big bow, so it would be a joke. Kai Lin thought like this, but he missed out on Shen Miao's reaction. She just quietly looked at the other. That kind of calmness that was beyond her age made Kai Lin suddenly angry out of shame. Shen Miao's gaze was like watching a child being played, pitiful and ridiculous. It was the most impulsive age, so Kai Lin did not say anything further. What do I not dare to do? Life and death contract is life and death contract. AI. Kai Darren, who was at the male side of the banquet, sighed anxiously. He could not wait to rush forward and beat up this unfilial son of his. Previously he thought that Kai Lin was just naughty and did not expect that he would pick Shen Miao. Kai Darren was not worried about his son's safety for the life and death contract, but he was afraid that Kai Lin would really make Shen Miao unable to step down from the stage or shoot and injure Shen Miao. Not everyone could withstand Shin Xian, this kind of uncouth old man. Shin Yu anxiously said, how can fifth younger sister sign a life and death contract? It is only an academy examinations, how can it be to such a stage? This cannot be done. Yes. How can fifth lady be so insensible? Ren Wanyan frowned, how can one say such words in a moment of impulsiveness? What if something goes wrong? She did not even mention that it was Kai Lin who forced Shin Miao to make this choice, and only attributed everything to Shin Miao's actions in a fit of anger. Chen Roqiu shook her head and sighed softly, in the end, the desire to win is a little strong. They were concerned about Shin Miao and anxious for Shin Miao. Naturally there was no lack of interest from the male side of the banquet. Prince Yu of the first rank stared at the purple-clad young female on the stage and his turbid eyes exuded interest. It was as if a beast had seen its prey, but that gaze was nauseating. This young lady of the Shin family is really bold but not astute. Zhou Wang pointed out, she actually signed the life and death agreement. Doesn't she know that if something goes wrong, Shin Xian can't say anything about it? Most likely it is to protect the reputation of the Shin family. Fu Xiuyi looked at Shin Miao on stage and said, after all no one is willing to hear bad words about their own family. Unfortunately, even this would not change the fact. Prince Jing shook his head, simply too impulsive. No wonder he said she was ignorant and stupid. Pei Lang picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. He also felt that Shin Miao's actions were too impulsive. Even though he knew that Prince Yu's words were a little too much, but if Shin Miao was really willing to think for the Shin family, then she should think of a way to retreat. Even though she might be talked about by others, it was better than making a fool of herself in front of everyone. Father, she will definitely win. Su Minglang clenched his small fists to express his position to his father. Master Su glanced at his youngest son. He did not know why, but he felt that Su Minglang was particularly concerned about Shin Miao. Master Su thought that it was most likely that she had coincidentally entered Su Minglang's eyes. Ever since the last time Su Minglang reminded the Su family to retreat, Master Su was much more amiable towards his youngest son. Now that he did not want to dampen his youngest son's interest, he vaguely followed his words, correct. She will definitely win. Chapter 57. Su Mingfeng did not know about Su Minglang's and Master Su's attitude. If he knew, he would definitely scoff because at this moment he was sitting in the pavilion and looking at the academy examination stage. He could not help but say, the young lady of the Shin family is really courageous to even set up a life and death agreement. Could it be that she thought that it was a military competition when General Shin talked to her about matters in the military camp? This is too simple-minded. Su Mingfeng had never concealed his words to his good friend, but today he did not hear his most picky good friend chiming in and could not help but look back at the other party. The young man in purple held the begonia in his hand and tilted his head to the side, deep in thought. The sun was just right, and the breeze caused the tassel on his dagger to sway slightly. His eyes were handsome and heroic, and the way he was deep in thought made people feel that he was a peerless gentleman. Third Xia, what are you thinking about? Su Mingfeng could not help but ask. Xia Jingxing kept the begonia in his bosom and suddenly stood up with a smile, interesting. How about we make a bet? What bet? Just bet. Xia Jingxing pointed to the stage and had an indescribable romantic smile, who will win? Naturally it is Kai Lin. Su Mingfeng frowned, could it be that you think there are other candidates? I bet that Shin Miao will win. He said. Preparations had already started on the stage. Today's martial category archery was enough to raise the attention of everyone present. How was this an academy examination challenge? It was clearly a gamble of life. Guang Wentang really let someone write a life and death agreement, and the blood-colored words were exceptionally eye-catching on the snow-white cloth. Shin Miao picked up the brush and wrote her name. She wrote it very naturally, as if she did not put this heavy thing in her eyes. That was natural. She had written her name countless of times. When she wrote the surrender letter to the Xiongnu for Fu Xiu-yi, when she volunteered to be the hostage of the Qin country, when Wen Yu was married, when the crown prince was deposed. Shen Miao, these two words represented blood and tears. No one could understand the suffering within. In contrast, Kai Lin was not that relaxed. Even though one's heart of victory was at its strongest when one was young, it was after all the first time one signed a life and death agreement. Kai Lin was just a child that was too well protected by the family and was not mature enough. Shen Miao's calmness made his heart even more afraid. The strokes of the pen were as heavy as 1,000 caddies and it was difficult for him to write. His name was crooked and formed a sharp contrast with Shen Miao's name. After he finished writing, he could not help but ask, Shen Miao, are you not afraid that I will miss in the first round? If I was afraid that you would hit me in the second round, I could have hurt you in the first round. Just as Shen Miao was about to take the fruits, she turned around and stared at Kai Lin. Gentleman Kai thinks so. But I don't agree. She said, everyone knows that young Master Kai's archery is outstanding. If he missed, it couldn't have been a mistake. He must have done it on purpose. Young Master Kai wanted to kill me on purpose, but I didn't. Everyone knows that I don't know anything about this, so it's reasonable that I missed. Kai Lin was stunned, and then he was dumbstruck. A deep sense of powerlessness surged into his heart. Yes, it was intentional for him to miss, but it was natural for Shen Miao to miss. He couldn't even miss, because, if that happened, everyone would be able to tell that he did it on purpose. He put Shen Miao in a dilemma and Shen Miao immediately returned the favor. No matter what, it would be wrong. In order for Gentleman Kai to avoid being shot by me in the second round, naturally you can kill me in one go in the first round. The life and death agreement has been signed, so even if you kill me, it would only be the result of the competition. Other than the spit of the world, you would not have to bear any responsibility. I am right here. Do you dare to kill? Chapter 58. I am right here. Do you dare to kill? Kai Lin stared at the young female in front of him as if it was the first time they met and his eyes were filled with disbelief. He was used to doing whatever he wanted in Guangwen Tang and was pampered till he could do whatever he wanted. As for Shen Miao, he only wanted to teach her a lesson today. Who knew that not only was Shen Miao not afraid, she even went against him. To actually say such words at this moment, it seemed that he was the one at a disadvantage. Did Kai Lin dare? Not to mention if he had the guts, even if he dared, could he do it? The young master of the Kai family could do things on a spur of the moment, but what about the Kai family? If Shen Miao was really killed by him today, not to mention a life for a life, it was possible for Shen Xian to behead the entire Kai family and personally beg for forgiveness. Moreover, he did not dare. He only knew how to talk glibly and had never been on the battlefield before, not even being stained with blood. Even though his archery skills were very good, but he only shot at fruits or animals and not people. But how could he shrink back now? Shen Miao was a female and was not afraid, so if he, a male, were to shrink back, one feared that he would not have the face to leave the residence tomorrow. Thinking of this, Kai Lin arrogantly said, whatever you say, we'll see what you've got on the shooting range. You speak happily now, but who knows if you would be scared witless later. His words were extremely rude and one did not know if he was trying to cover up his panic. The calmer Shen Miao was, the more uneasy he was. After all, he wanted to see the other party's flustered look as if only that could calm his guilty conscience. Thus he only hoped that his words would make Shen Miao feel embarrassed. If it was a normal female, when a male spoke to her in such a ruthless manner, she would naturally feel ashamed and act coy or even cry. But when Shen Miao heard it, she only glanced at him faintly and her heart was as still as water, making Kai Lin feel that everything was just him messing around. He was somewhat stunned and suspected that he had made a mistake today. Why would he feel guilty when facing Shen Miao, this idiot? Shen Miao had already gone to the examiner to take the fruits. That fruit was about the size of an adult male's fist and it was square at the bottom and round at the top. Shen Miao stood at the most eastern side of the stage and placed the fruit on top of her head. The arena gradually became noisy. At this moment, she must be pretending to be calm, but in reality, she is scared out of her wits. Yi Pei Lan smiled and said, I really can't wait to see her scared to tears. Since the Ming Qi Academy examinations, there has never been a female who was challenged by a male in terms of martial arts. Jiang Shaoxian raised her little finger and tilted her head. This Shen Miao can be considered as the first time. It's just that it's scary to be humiliated in front of so many people. Io, why is Fifth Lady still standing there? What if it misses the young master of the Kai family? Ren Wanyun said. Her heart was in a difficult position. If anything happened to Shen Miao, no matter how well Shen Xian treated the Shen family, he would not spare her. What is Second Saw worried about? Chen Roqiu said lightly, after all it is just children playing around. The young master of the Kai family wasn't a child who didn't know anything. As long as Wunyang admits defeat and begs for mercy, I naturally won't make things difficult for her. I just hope that Wunyang won't fight on impulse. She described this kind of life and death matter as children playing around. After all, Ren Wanyun was the one in charge of the family, and if anything happened, Ren Wanyun would be the one to bear the responsibility. But her words had hit the bottom of Ren Wanyun's heart. It was all because Shen Miao wanted to fight on impulse. If Shen Miao properly begged for mercy and said some soft words to Kai Lin, naturally she would not end up in this situation. Don't worry. Chen Roqiu said, I think that gentleman of the Kai family only wanted to scare Fifth Lady. In this kind of academy examinations, everyone is fighting for poise, so it is impossible to stop now. Mother need not worry. Shen Qing also said to Ren Wanyun, Kai Lin's marksmanship is very good. No matter what, he would not miss. Shen Qing was still thinking that Shen Miao was blocking her dream of becoming a prince's consort, and now she could not wait for Shen Miao to lose all her face. One heard that some people would pee and poop when they were so shocked. One did not know what would happen to Shen Miao. If Kai Lin really missed, it would not be bad to ruin her face. Shen Qing thought. Shen Yu did not think as far as Shen Qing. She only wanted to see Shen Miao kneeling and begging for mercy, as if that would be able to regain her self-esteem. She glanced at Kai Lin from afar, but Kai Lin did not look at her. Kai Lin held the longbow in his hands as he faced Shen Miao, who was 3 zhang away with cold sweat dripping down his forehead. Shen Miao stood there quietly as the wind blew up the corner of her wide cloak. As her purple clothes fluttered, her brows and eyes were similar, but that kind of dignified bearing, as if she had experienced a great storm, and calmness, gilded her entire person with a layer of dazzling brilliance. Kai Lin slowly pulled the bow. He thought, as long as Shen Miao begged for mercy, as long as she shed a tear and said a few words, he would be able to take the opportunity to humiliate her, and there would be no need to be in such a dilemma. Unfortunately, his wish ultimately fell through. Shen Miao's expression was calm, as if she did not put him in her eyes. Shen Yu frowned. Why did the scene of Shen Miao crying and begging for mercy not appear? Why did Shen Miao look calmer than Kai Lin? There were already quite a number of people who discovered this point, and their impression of the original idiot was quietly changing. Not every young lady could stand in front of a person with a bow and arrow, and if one were to say that she inherited Shen Xian's composure in front of the enemy, it could only be said that a tiger father would not have a dog daughter. Kai Lin's hands started to tremble. Usually it was an easy matter for him to shoot the fruit from 3 zhang away, but today it was exceptionally difficult. That distance seemed to be very far. And Shen Miao's words lingered in his ears, I am here. Do you dare to kill? Did he dare? Did he dare? Did he dare? With a xiu sound, the arrow fiercely streaked across. But it only swayed in midair before falling down. It did not even reach the corner of Shen Miao's clothes, as if there was not enough strength, much less shoot the fruit. The audience burst into laughter. There was even a classmate who teased, Kai Lin, could it be that you have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex? Normally one could shoot from 10 zhang, but today one cannot even shoot from 3 zhang. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and immediately started to shoot. The second arrow was shot at Shen Miao's feet. The third arrow brushed past Shen Miao's hair and knocked down the fruit on Shen Miao's head. Shen Miao's hair was scattered and a head of black hair flowed down to her shoulders. However, even when the arrow narrowly brushed past her cheeks, her expression did not change at all. Black hair, purple clothes, the young female's snow-white skin and beautiful appearance stood straight in the wind. Kai Lin's hands softened and the bow and arrows fell to the ground. The audience was silent. Even a fool could see that the person who was afraid was not Shen Miao but Kai Lin. I am here. Do you dare to kill me? Do not dare. I dare. She smiled faintly, and a tinge of cruelty appeared in her eyes that were like those of a cub's. Coupled with her face that was still somewhat innocent, there was a strange sort of beauty to it. Now, it is my turn. Chapter 59. It is my turn. The 3 words were said lightly by Shen Miao, but there was an inexplicable chill in them. It was as if the voice came from the 9 heavens and smashed in front of Kai Lin. The cold sweat on Kai Lin's forehead slid down his face as he stared blankly at Shen Miao in front of him. Shen Miao took a few steps forward and bent down to pick up the longbow on the ground. Everyone present were watching her every move and their eyes were reluctant to turn away. This was really an unexpected scene. One thought that one would see Shen Miao fainting from fright or lose her composure, but she was completely fine. It was Kai Lin who was drenched in cold sweat and none of the 3 arrows were heavy. After a short silence, the audience below the stage started to discuss. Indeed, a tiger father does not beget a dog daughter. This young lady of the Shen family has such guts. The person who spoke had a good relationship with Shen Xian and initially had some doubts when he heard that Shen Miao was an idiot, but after seeing it today, he thought that those words were just rumors. With this kind of courage and boldness, how would one be an idiot? It was obvious that there was someone who deliberately did it to smear the young lady's reputation. Indeed, not bad. You see, just now she did not even blink, and if the arrow was slightly off, it would have scratched her cheek. This young lady really has the air of a great general. Even if it was us, we would most likely jump in shock. Why don't you see which family she comes from? Can General Shen's young lady be bad? It seems that those words were just rumors and cannot be trusted. AI, no wonder one would deliberately smear her name. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. To be so outstanding at such a young age, it is no wonder that others would be jealous. Most of the people in the official circles had a good attitude towards Shen Xian. After all, there were many interlinked interests. Moreover, they were always working in the court and were not as meticulous as the women in the inner courtyard, thus they looked at things differently. In the past it was Shen Miao who was young, but now that she was older, naturally she would display her outstanding qualities. Prince Shou and Prince Jing looked at one another before Prince Jing shook his head and sighed. It seems that both of us are wrong. She is really a bold person. Number 9 is regretting it now. Prince Shou smiled as he looked at Fu Xiu-yi. How could one reject such an extraordinary female? One would not have such a change in one night. It is either that this 5th Shen young lady met an expert or she was deliberately pretending to be a fool. No matter which one it is, number 9, you are at a disadvantage. Prince Jing said. Fu Xiu-yi smiled and said, a fair and graceful lady. Unfortunately, you are not someone I like. Regret? Fu Xiu-yi did not feel that it was just that Shen Miao's calm look was somewhat dazzling in his eyes. He also didn't believe that a person could change into a completely different person overnight. Could it be that he had been pretending to be a fool all along? But why did he pretend to be a fool? Could it be that he did it on purpose to make him dislike him? Pei Lang put down the teacup that he was holding. He did not know why, but just now he was worried for Shen Miao. Unexpectedly, she managed to stabilize herself. Not only did she stabilize herself, but she also scared Kai Lin so much that he couldn't even pull a normal arrow properly. Shen Miao was so powerful. Indeed a wonderful person. Prince Yu smiled satisfactorily and stared at Shen Miao's figure. Do not know. What does it taste like? Pei Lang frowned. Prince Yu's words most likely meant that he was thinking of something dirty and shameful. Unfortunately his words carried little weight and he could not do anything. You have lost. In the pavilion, Xie Jingxing was leaning against the window as he said in a calm and composed manner. It was actually this kind of result. Su Mingfeng's eyes almost popped out. He looked at Xie Jingxing and then looked at the distant stage before asking, did you already know about it? One must be willing to bet and be willing to lose. Xie Jingxing stood up and patted the dust off his body. Chapter 60. Alright, I admit defeat. What is the punishment? Su Mingfeng answered straightforwardly. Your punishment is to celebrate with me after this match. How about the new Hong that has been buried for 20 years? You really have a black heart. Su Mingfeng scolded and immediately realized something and asked doubtfully, but why celebrate? Is there anything to be happy about? Not now, but there will be soon. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. It's something worth being happy about. On the stage, Shen Miao handed the fruit to Kai Lin. Kai Lin's hands trembled as he received the fruits and asked, Shen Miao, have you learned archery before? Never. Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him. Today is my first time touching a bow, but since I am able to shoot 3 arrows, even if I do not understand the first one, there is still the next one. I will eventually learn it. Kai Lin shuddered and looked at Shen Miao incredulously. Are you talking nonsense? Just now Shen Miao's expression was calm and unhurried, as if she often did this kind of thing with others. He was lucky enough to think that Shen Miao was an expert. After all, Shen Xian was the formidable great general and it was possible for him to personally teach his daughter archery. But now Shen Miao actually said that today was the first time she touched the bow. How dare she? He said, you don't know anything, how can you shoot from afar? It's obvious that I can't hit this fruit. Am I not going to die for nothing? Young Master Kai is too ridiculous, Shen Miao said calmly. Her voice was neither loud nor soft. When she spoke, it was just loud enough for everyone to hear. Everyone looked at the purple-clothed girl. She lowered her eyebrows and narrowed her eyes, but her aura was overbearing. Just now, when young Master Kai challenged me to fight, he never asked me if I knew how to shoot. When you were shooting at me just now, you didn't ask me if I would die. Why is it that when it's my turn to shoot, you're asking me if I can do it? These words made Kai Lin speechless. Indeed, he only wanted to vent Shen Yu's anger and deliberately chose the archery that Shen Miao did not know. But now, he had shot himself in the foot. Young Lady Shen, my son is naughty and mischievous. This official apologizes to you on his behalf. Please do not take it to heart. It's just that you really don't know how to use archery right now, so it's hard to avoid accidents. It's not good for you to pursue the matter. Lord Kai finally couldn't bear it any longer and suddenly opened his mouth under the gaze of his wife. As soon as the words left his mouth, his face turned red. However, there was nothing he could do. Although it was embarrassing, it was better than losing his son's life. He even used this official to threaten Shen Miao. Even though it was not good to bully a young lady like this, Kai Darren was somewhat resentful that Shen Miao did not know how to be flexible and his tone involuntarily had some majesty. But how would Shen Miao be intimidated by an official? She had dealt with the Xiongnu, the imperial family of the Qin country and the emperor of Ming Qi. As for the officials, she really did not put them in her eyes. Thus everyone could only watch as Shen Miao's chin was slightly raised. Kai Darren was originally standing below the stage, so looking from afar, he looked like an official crawling at Shen Miao's feet. Shen Miao's words made everyone dumbfounded. She said, Kai Darren, just now I bet my life and now it is Kai Lin's turn to bet his life. The life and death agreement has already been set and it is clearly written in black and white. Even if I were to shoot him to death today, it would be fair and square and there would not be a trace of relationship. If one is willing to bet, one must be willing to lose. Not waiting for Kai Darren to speak, she continued, one cannot stand without trust. This rule was personally suggested by Kai Lin and now to go back on it, could it be that Kai Darren's style is the same in the official circles? Once the situation is not right, one would immediately change the rules. Chapter 61. One cannot stand without trust. This rule was personally proposed by Kai Lin and now to go back on it. Could it be that Kai Darren also has such a style in the officialdom? Once the situation is not right, he would immediately change the rules. Previously Kai Lin said, Guangwen Tang did not specially set a precedent for someone. Whatever rules the challenger says, then the rules will be followed. Why? A dignified great general's daughter is also such a cowardly person. His words were still ringing in one's ears and now Shin Miao returned it back to Kai Darren's face, making Kai Lin speechless. The rules are set by you all and now you all are not doing it. With a red mouth and white teeth, is it possible to do anything? Are all the Darren of Ming Qi like this? Her words were sharp and ruthlessly exaggerated the matter. Kai Darren's cold sweat suddenly dripped down. There were so many colleagues in the officialdom and today there were his relatives and naturally there were also his enemies. When Shin Miao's words fell into the ears of those who had the intention, who knew what kind of fuss would be made out of it. Moreover there were people from the imperial family here and if it was not good, it would attract the suspicion of the imperial family. Not to mention Kai Lin, even the entire Kai family would suffer a calamity. Young Lady Shin said correctly. The one who spoke was Prince Yu of the first rank. He smiled strangely at Shin Miao and said, Kai Darren, Gentleman Kai set the rules so naturally it must be completed by himself. When would Prince Yu of the first rank be kind enough to help others out of trouble? When those words were spoken, everyone's eyes were cast towards Shin Miao. There were all kinds of meanings, some understanding and some contempt. Prince Shou and Prince Jing looked at each other before Prince Jing sighed, even Royal Shu has spoken. Perhaps we will have another young royal Saw. When Prince Shou finished, he also felt that it was funny and shook his head without speaking. Prince Yu of the first rank had already spoken so no matter how dissatisfied Kai Darren was, he would not dare to refute at this moment. Even though he was angry in his heart, he could only brace himself and say, It is this official's lack of consideration. He stared at Kai Lin with sorrow and anger at Kai Lin before turning and leaving. Kai Lin watched helplessly as his father left and his heart was also anxious. He originally thought that Shin Miao was only good at talking but when he met with Shin Miao's clear eyes, his heart could not help but feel a chill. She was like a silent beast. She clearly looked like a little girl who had not yet grown up, but why did she feel so scary? He lowered his voice and said, If you hurt me, the Kai clan will definitely not forgive you. This could be considered a threat. Kai Lin was now riding a tiger and it was hard to get off. With Shin Miao's archery skills, if he were to miss by even a little, his little life would not be guaranteed. When he hunted with his good friend, he had also seen arrows miss, shooting into the eyes or buttocks of the prey, but it was not a one-shot kill. The struggle of the prey was really tragic. Could it be that he was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered? He threatened like this, hoping that Shin Miao would have a sense of propriety and gently pull the bow, and that would be it. He whispered again, If you are sensible this time, in the future. In the future I will not find trouble with you in Guangwen Tang. Shin Miao gently raised her eyebrows and looked up at him. Kai Lin looked nervous, as if he was afraid that she would not agree. Unfortunately, she had seen many such people in her previous life. He only bullied the weak and feared the strong. Now he was afraid so he relented. Once today's matter was over, Kai Lin would definitely be the same as before, and would even wait for a chance to retaliate after losing face. Just like a badger that had just left its nest in the jungle and thought that it had dominated the jungle, but when it met a ferocious wolf, its face would change. But if there was a chance in the future, this badger would still think of ways to give it a try. Unfortunately, she was never a wolf. She was a tiger. How to make this badger never dare to provoke her again, that was. Bite off his neck in one bite, so that he would never dare to provoke her again. She smiled gently. Previously I asked you, do you dare to kill me if I am here? Your archery skills had already answered this question for you. Now that this question is in front of me, do you want to hear my answer? Her little face was as smooth as jade and still had a bit of tenderness, like a sprout growing in spring, but her words were so savage that it made one's heart palpitate. I dare. Finishing this sentence, she turned around and walked to the shooting platform. Kai Lin stood at the same spot in a daze and only recovered to his senses when the examiner called his name. Only then did he discover that everyone was looking at him and their eyes were filled with a look of watching a good show. His gaze landed on the pink-clad young lady at the female side of the banquet. Shen Yu was talking to the person beside her and did not even look at the platform. He suddenly felt somewhat lost and felt that his actions at this moment made others even more disgusted. He was the one who provoked it, so how could he shrink back now? If he lost to a female, one feared that the Kai family would become a laughing stock in the capital, not to mention that Shen Yu was watching from below the platform. If he were to make a fool of himself, how could he face Shen Yu in the future? Facing Shen Yu? Just a little female, and she said it's so frightening. Could it be that she really dared to kill? Even if there was a life and death agreement, killing a person was not something that could be easily explained. Thinking about this point, Kai Lin encouraged himself in his heart and pretended to be calm as he walked to the white line 3 zhang away and placed the fruit on top of his head. Everyone looked at him and then looked at Shen Miao and felt that there was some strange feeling. In the distance, Xie Jingxing opened his mouth. Make a guess. Did you hit or not? Of course not hit. Su Mingfeng stared at him, not to say if she has the guts to injure Kai Lin, even if she dared, does she have the ability? There are very few unmarried females who practice martial arts, and moreover Shen Miao's character, you should know from the Ding capital that she does not know anything. Xie Jingxing smiled lowly, not necessarily. Could it be that you want to bet with me again? Why the need for such a superfluous move? I have already seen the ending. Su Mingfeng was used to his good friend's mysteriousness, so he said, what ending? Xie Jingxing lazily said, you lose. Shen Yu looked at Shen Miao on the stage and her heart tightened. She softly asked Chen Roqiu, Mother, will she injure Gentleman Kai? Naturally not. Chen Roqiu saw that her daughter was somewhat bewitched by Shen Miao today and could not help but sigh in her heart. She thought that she was still too young and could not maintain her composure. She said, how could it be that easy to hit the target? I heard from your first uncle that drawing a bow also requires strength. Your 5th younger sister has never drawn a bow or shot an arrow in the mansion. I'm afraid that just drawing the bow requires a lot of strength. You should not let your imagination run wild. Your 5th younger sister is only playing around. Was Shen Miao really playing around? Naturally not. She lifted her hand, knocked the arrow and pulled the bow. Her actions were so smooth that it was as if she had practiced it thousands of times. There was no delicately holding hands, nor was there any hesitation, as if she did not know what to do. The actions were so neat that one would not doubt that she was a skilled archer. In the next moment, the arrow that left the bow shot towards Kai Lin with a murderous intent. The entire audience quietened down, and in the extreme silence, the arrow that fell to the ground made a crisp sound. And the arrowhead still had a little red. Chapter 62. On and off the stage, everyone froze into a still picture. The one who broke this picture was Kai Lin. He reached out and touched his left cheek where the arrow had just grazed past, and there was a little red blood stain. Everyone was stunned. Shen Miao actually dared to shoot. She did not stop the arrow midway and also did not deliberately shoot to the side. She was neither near nor far from the Chao Guozi, but it just brushed past Kai Lin's cheek. Kai Lin shouted loudly, "Shin Miao, what are you doing?" Before he finished speaking, the second arrow had already swept over with a strong gust of wind. It brushed past his right cheek, and Kai Lin immediately felt a burning pain on his right cheek. He reached out to touch it, and to his surprise, he discovered that it was a smear of blood. He was almost going crazy. Staring at Shin Miao in disbelief, Kai Daran also wanted to stop, but Prince Yu of the first rank was still sitting in front and he dared not move. Ren Wanyun suddenly stood up. Is Fifth Lady crazy? How dare she really injure the young master of the Kai family? Your residence's fifth young lady is really powerful. Yi Furen pretended to be surprised. How would an ordinary female have such courage? To injure the young master of the Kai family, in the future would not both masters have a few more colleagues in court who do not have good relations with each other? These words were said in Ren Wanyun's and Chen Rochio's hearts. Previously they only thought that Shin Miao would make a fool of herself, but who knew that not only did Shin Miao not make a fool of herself, she even injured Kai Lin. If the Kai family were to denounce the Shin residence because of this, the Kai family would walk the path of civil officials and offend the Kai family. How would Shin Gui and Shin Wan, the two brothers, end up well? Thinking of this, Ren Wanyun was extremely anxious and could not wait to bring Shin Miao to the Kai family to apologize. Just as she was about to shout out to stop Shin Miao's actions, Chen Rochio held her hands down. "Younger sister, what are you doing?" Ren Wanyun said unhappily, "Are you going to watch Fifth Lady get into trouble? Later when Master asks, who would be able to shoulder this responsibility?" Chen Rochio simply wanted to worship this second sister-in-law. She was born more noble than Ren Wanyun and boasted that she was from a scholarly family. She was most disdainful of such worldly actions and naturally looked down on Ren Wanyun's idea of not being able to enter the elegant hall. She said, "Second Saw's thinking is not wrong, but just now one also heard that even Prince Yu of the first rank also spoke. Otherwise why do you think Master Kai did not speak up till now and only watch his own son get injured? Even if second sister-in-law spoke, could she make the decision here? It's better to wait and see. If he asks, just treat it as a child's play. Don't tell me we're just going to watch." Ren Wanyun knew that what Chen Rochio said was reasonable, but she could not help but worry. What if Fifth Lady does not know the severity of her actions and cause a big disaster? The life and death contract is one thing, but the rumors in the Ding capital is another. What are you afraid of? Didn't you see Fifth Lady's attack just now? Chen Rochio smiled. She obviously knows how to draw the bow and is just deliberately giving the Kai family's brat face. This is a deliberate revenge. But she should also know how to act properly, otherwise it would not be as simple as a scratch on the cheek. Chen Rochio sighed. After all, one has offended others. Since that is the case, then let nature take its course. If Fifth Lady were to really be ruthless in her actions, one feared that in the future she would have to bear the reputation of being cruel and vicious. Every single word of their sister-in-law's words fell into the ears of the two sisters, Shin Qing and Shin Yu. They were still young and did not understand the matters of the officialdom, thus they only heard the last sentence. Shin Yu looked at Shin Miao, who was wearing a long gown with wide sleeves. Today she was calm and composed and was in the limelight, which was really annoying. She thought that it would be good if Shin Miao really shot Kai Lin to death. Then Shin Miao would be carrying a human life. Such a vicious person, who would dare to marry in the future and who would dare to get close to her? Now this kind of scratch was only powerful and not vicious. The more she thought about it, the more sparkling things flashed in Shin Yu's eyes. The safety of Kai Lin, who wholeheartedly wanted to make things difficult for Shin Miao, had long been thrown to the back of her mind and even hoped that Kai Lin would use his own life to fulfill Shin Miao's notoriety. Even though the people below the stage were discussing, they did not dare to make a sound because of Prince Yu's face. Even the Kai family's husband and wife were burning with anxiety and could only watch their son standing on the stage to become an arrow target. "Shin Miao, what exactly do you want?" Even 2 arrows had grazed his cheeks and his entire face was burning with pain. Other than anger towards Shen Miao, Kai Lin also had a trace of fear. He suddenly discovered that there was nothing that Shen Miao did not dare to do. She was clearly a lunatic and dared to do anything. Separated by some distance, Shen Miao's voice was a little vague and could not be transmitted to the people below the stage, but it could be transmitted to Kai Lin's ears. Her voice was light as if it came from the clouds, making one not dare to look up. She said, "To teach you a lesson." Shen Miao suddenly raised her voice, "There is still one last arrow." Everyone in the audience stared at that arrow. Kai Lin's legs were about to go soft and he pinched himself hard so that he would not go soft. Because he saw that Shen Miao's arrow was aimed at his head. He was very afraid. It was a kind of fearless fear towards the Shen family. This kind of fear was so strong that it captured all of his attention at this moment. He wanted to escape from this academy examination stage, but Shen Miao's arrow was aimed at him, as if she could chase him to the ends of the earth. The young lady of the Shen family is just too strong. Even though the Darren at the male side of the banquet admired Shen Miao's calmness, they also felt sorry for her performance at the moment. One had to know that it was not a good thing for a female to be too strong. She was now biting Kai Lin and not letting go. It was nothing more than to retaliate against Kai Lin's provocation. But Kai Lin did not cause any harm to her, but Shen Miao had scratched Kai Lin's face. Even though males were not more delicate than males and it was not a big deal to leave a scar, but to leave it on the face. At the end it would not look good. This is like General Shen's daughter. There were also some who applauded Shen Miao. If one only knew to be bullied and did not fight back, General Shen would be so angry that he would be in a complete mess if he knew about it. But you see now that the arrow is aimed at Kai Lin's head. This is the intention to take Kai Lin's life. This is too vicious. Kai Lin's legs kept trembling and he looked at the purple-clad young female in the distance as if he was looking at an evil spirit. Her appearance was gentle and beautiful, her eyes were clear and even had a bit of innocence. But there was no hesitation in the movements of her hands. Shen Miao softly said, "The 3rd arrow." As soon as he loosened his grip, an arrow shot out from the bow. A sharp killing intent rushed towards Kai Lin's forehead, scaring him so much that he knelt down with a plop and let out a blood-curdling scream, "Help! Lin Kai Furen and Kai Darren exclaimed at the same time. The entire audience stood up and stretched their necks to look at the situation on the stage. Kai Lin collapsed on the ground, and the round fruit on the ground had been pierced through by the black arrow, completely pierced through. Chapter 63. In the silence, the appearance of the fruits was like a great irony, reflecting Kai Lin's scratched face, tears of fear and Shen Miao's indifferent posture. She kept her bow and bent over to pick up the fruits on the ground. She glanced at Kai Lin and suddenly smiled, "You have lost." She had a tender look to begin with, and today, she appeared excessively calm from beginning to end, causing people to overlook her age. Now with a light smile, there was a bit of naivety. Everyone looked carefully and felt that the original dullness was not dullness. This young lady actually had bright eyes and a bit of grace and beauty. Kai Lin could not say a word. His face still had the bloodstains from the scratches that were not wiped clean, and as tears streamed down, the bloodstains were diluted. His entire face was red and disheveled. At this moment, he did not care about his face and only looked at Shen Miao with eyes full of fear. Shen Miao raised her eyebrows and seemed to finally know fear. It was good to be afraid. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey so that in the future these snakes, worms, rats and ants would know their place. The servants quickly helped Kai Lin, who was so scared that his legs went soft, off the stage. The examiner who was in charge of the academy examinations walked to Shen Miao's side and saw the fruits that were pierced by the arrows. He asked in surprise, "Shen young lady had practiced archery before?" Not only the aim must be good, the strength in pulling the bow must not be lax. Shen Miao was a delicate little girl but she was so skilled in pulling the arrow. Moreover, everyone could clearly see the last arrow. Kai Lin was so scared that he fell down, and Shen Miao was able to shoot the fruit when Kai Lin could not move. This was something that was not surprising. Practiced? Shen Miao slightly tilted her head and fell into deep thoughts. That was the first year when she went to the Qin country as a hostage. No matter if it was the princes or princesses of the Qin country, they all loved to humiliate her. It was a very interesting thing to see the Empress being humiliated, but she could not get angry because at that time the Qin country was lending troops to Ming Qi. Those princesses and princes invented a new way of playing, and it was the rules that Kai Lin set in the academy examinations. Changing the person to hit the fruits. When she was the target, those Qin imperial family deliberately shot her hair messily, shot her clothes, and even occasionally accidentally shot her arms and neck. She could only grit her teeth and endure. At that time, every night, she would stay in her room and carefully set up a target. She practiced diligently, treating those targets as people who had hurt her. She practiced seriously and worked hard. Finally, she could hit the target every time. But in the daytime, when it was her turn to shoot an arrow, she would still deliberately miss it, or she would be too weak to draw the bow. No choice. One had to lower one's head under the eaves. She must return to Ming Qi alive to see Wan Yu and Fu Ming. This kind of strenuous life lasted for an entire year. Today, when Kai Lin brought it up again, it suddenly brought her back to those humiliating days. In this life, she had nothing that could be used against her. Naturally, she could kill and shoot whenever she wanted. Otherwise, she would have to live a restrained life. Whoever provoked her, she would ruthlessly return the favor. If the Kai family dared to talk about Shen Xian, then they would shut their mouths. This was what she should do. She smiled and said, "I've seen elder brother practicing diligently in the courtyard. I've seen it many times, so I've followed his example. I didn't expect to hit the mark today." This made the Kai couple below the stage so angry that they were in a complete mess. Their son was once a first-rank archer, but today not only did he not hit a single target, he even made a fool out of himself in front of everyone. Shen Miao said that she was just following the example of the first time she pulled the bow and shot the fruit. What kind of muddled matter was this? Pa, 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 a clear and crisp applause sounded. Everyone turned around and saw Prince Yu clapping his hands. Indeed not bad. Shen Miao glanced at him but did not make a sound. The examiner said in a clear voice, "Is there anyone else who wants to challenge the first-rank archery?" This round was naturally won by Shen Miao, and other people would naturally come up to challenge Shen Miao. If there was no one to challenge, Shen Miao would be a well-deserved first rank. Hearing those words, Shen Yu's face suddenly became ugly. In the first academy examinations, she was completely overshadowed by Shen Miao. She looked at Fu Xiu-yi, who was talking to Prince Jing and Prince Zhou from afar, and clenched her hands tightly before loosening them. In his heart, he cursed Kai Lin, who was a good-for-nothing. But in the next moment, she heard someone shouting, "I want to challenge Shen Miao." At the male side of the banquet, a youth stood up. This person looked to be around 16 or 17 years of age and was considered not bad. Unfortunately, his pair of eyes revealed an unconcealable sophistication and shrewdness. Even if his tone was humble, there was a kind of pretentious feeling. With just one look, Shen Miao knew who this person was. She found it somewhat funny in her heart. This was the Shu son of the Marquis of Lin and Xie family, Xie Jingxing's Shu younger brother, second young master Xie Changwu. This person did not have any other abilities but was extremely slick. He was the most pretentious person in the officialdom and was proficient in bootlicking. Afterwards the entire Xie family collapsed, and this pair of Shu sons and Madame Fang relied on the new emperor's pension for the Xie family to live comfortably. Xie Changwu and his younger brother Xie Changchao even entered the court as officials. At that time she did not like these two brothers at all because the two Shu sons of the Xie family were on Mei Furen's side and were on good terms with Fu Sheng, and often helped Fu Sheng to suppress Fu Ming. The reason why Shen Miao reminded Xia Jingxing to find an opportunity to eradicate his own Shu brothers was because she was still brooding over the matters of the past lifetime. These two people must not be left alive, as leaving them alive would be enmity. Now she had yet to take revenge for her enmity, but this person took the initiative to send himself to her doorstep. But for what? She looked at Master Kai's position. Master Kai's face was calm and Xia Chang Chao seemed to be comforting him. That's right, recently the two Xia brothers were preparing to find a job under Kai Darren, thus they had been taking the initiative to befriend Kai Lin. Unfortunately, the one Kai Lin wanted to befriend was Xia Jingxing and did not care about the two brothers. But wasn't it a good opportunity now? One had to know that in the past lifetime, at the end of this year, which was when she successfully forced Fu Xiu-yi to marry, Xia Changwu and Xia Chang Chao entered Kai Darren's hands. After that, 2 years later, the Kai family was involved in a corruption case and their assets were confiscated and exterminated. There were many things that had changed, but there were also many things that did not change. It seemed that after the changes, the ending had not changed. The two Xia brothers wanted to use this method to please the Kai family, but let her sweep their face. Just as Shen Miao was about to answer, she heard a voice coming from the side. That voice was lazy and had an indescribable ridicule. Usually you do not practice with older brother at home and now come to challenge a little girl. Xia Changwu, the more you live, the more you are regressing. Xia Jingxing appeared on the stage and he folded his arms across his chest as he looked at the two Shu brothers who were stunned below the stage. He smiled, "How about I challenge the both of you? Let me discipline my younger brother and not learn from a coward to fight with a female and disgrace himself outside." He looked at Shen Miao again and said, "You go down." Chapter 64. Shen Miao stared at him without moving. She had reminded Xia Jingxing, so she was naturally prepared for Xia Jingxing to go on stage, but she didn't expect it to be like this. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was as if Xia Jingxing was helping her out, but the truth was not like that. Xia Changwu did not expect that Xia Jingxing would suddenly rush out. Today, he only wanted to please the Kai family. He thought that since Shen Miao had already offended the Kai family, as long as he humiliated Shen Miao and taught her a lesson on behalf of the Kai family would naturally have a good impression of him. Even though it seemed that Shen Miao's archery was not bad, but there was a huge disparity in strength between a female and a male. Moreover, the reason why Kai Lin failed was because he had underestimated the enemy. But Xia Changwu was not a person who underestimated the enemy. If it was possible, he would even use some subtle tricks on the arrows. Anyway, Shen Miao was not a person who often practiced martial arts and would definitely not be able to see it. He had made such a good plan, but he never thought that his elder brother would kill him halfway. Not only were the two Xia brothers stunned, but the rest of the audience was also stunned. If the Marquis of Lineage was here today, one feared that he would also be stunned on the spot. Xia Jingxing did not participate in the academy examinations every year, but even so, everyone knew that he was good in both civil and martial arts, especially in martial arts. Even though he did not compete, he had followed the army a few times and his performance made others look at him in a new light. If he was not in the limelight, it would be hard to avoid attracting the imperial family's fear. Xia Jingxing's reputation on the battlefield was no less than that of a veteran general. However, the reason why he did not participate in the annual academy examinations was not to dispel the royal family's fear. It was purely because he did not care about trifles, as if he had a few rebellious bones, or because he was deliberately against his father. In short, he looked down upon the performance of the academy examination. It was because he did not participate that everyone could only look at the two Shu sons of the residents of the Marquis of Lin, and Xia Changwu and Xia Chang Chao also put in hard work and were able to get a few first grades in the academy examinations. But this year, the most cynical little marquis of the Xia family and the two outstanding concubine brothers were competing. Who would win? Although Xia Jingxing's reputation was out there, people were more used to accepting things in front of them. Xie Jingxing had never displayed his talent in the Ding capital. The women only knew of this youth's brilliance from their master's words, but what they heard was false, so they still had some doubts. Although those youths envied Xie Jingxing for being able to be so free and unrestrained, they were also jealous. Now that they saw that they might be able to dampen Xie Jingxing's spirit, they were somewhat happy. In addition, the two Xie brothers knew how to conduct themselves, and there were many people who were on good terms with them, thus the youths would side with Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao. It was the young females who had long blushed in front of Xie Jingxing's handsome looks. Looking at his extraordinary bearing, there was a kind of valiance that was completely different from the soft temperament of the Ding capital's hedonistic young masters. It was as if he had a blood-cold aura, but he always smiled evilly, which made him extraordinarily charming. Therefore, the girls were all optimistic about Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao took a panoramic view of everyone's expression. Most likely these people felt that Xie Jingxing came up to challenge his two younger brothers on a whim, and his noble son's temper flared up. But Shen Miao gently smiled. Xie Jingxing was not an easy person to deal with. Since he was already on the stage of the academy examinations, there was no possibility for his two Shu brothers to retreat unscathed. The difference between Xie Jingxing and her was that even though she acted arrogantly on the surface, she still had a plan and knew that she had to plan slowly in order to achieve her goal. But Xie Jingxing, most likely because he had the residence of the Marquis of Lineage behind him, he was fearless. But behind him, was there only the residence of the Marquis of Lineage? Chapter 65. Just as she was thinking, Xie Changwu below the stage spoke out, "Eldest brother, this one fear is not good." "What is not good?" Xie Jingxing glanced at Shen Miao and then looked at Xie Changwu before suddenly smiling. "Or do you think that Shen Miao is more challenging than this marquis?" With a huff sound, everyone below the stage laughed. Xie Jingxing continued to size up Shen Miao. "No internal energy and no martial arts, but you challenged her to archery. You are also a martial arts practitioner and challenging a female who does not even have the strength to truss a chicken." This older brother is unable to understand. His lips suddenly hooked up into a smile and his voice was low and magnetic, "But this little girl's looks are not bad. If you are to pick based on looks, it is worthy of the name." This time, those youths who were pulling their lips started to laugh, and some of them even looked at Shen Miao ambiguously. Indeed, now that Shen Miao had shed that layer of stupid image, her entire facial features seemed to be glowing. She was born to be not bad and had a lovable and adorable appearance, but was extremely quiet. This kind of contrast made one unable to move their eyes away. It was just that her previous image was too stubborn and one could not change it in a short period of time. But Xie Jingxing's words seemed to have lifted that layer of paper, and the youths did not hesitate to agree that Shen Miao was a very special little beauty. The females, however, were not happy. Xie Jingxing's words were clearly praising Shen Miao's looks. Shen Yu's and Shen Qing's expressions changed. Even though they admired Fu Xiu-yi, there were so many handsome males in the world, and there was not only one Fu Xiu-yi. A youth like Xie Jingxing was unique in the Ding capital and even in the entire Mingqi. This kind of youth actually praised that idiot, which made Shen Yu and Shen Qing, who had high self-esteem, extremely jealous. Yi Pei Lan frowned and muttered, "Is little Xie Marquis blind? How could he think that Shen Miao is good-looking? It must be that Shen Miao used some method to confuse him." Bai Wei bit her lips and stared at the youth on the stage. Shen Miao is really shameless. Previously she kept pestering Prince Ding, and now she came to pester little Xie Marquis. Shen Miao did not know of their discussions, but even if she knew, she would just laugh it off. Because she knew that Xie Jingxing's motive for saying these words was not to tease her, nor was it to help her out, but to use a method that the two Xie brothers could not refuse, to force them to go on stage. In all fairness, the two Xie brothers were naturally not willing to go against Xie Jingxing. Not mentioning the outcome, Xie Ding had always doted on the D sons, and if a Shu son and a D son were to challenge each other on the academy examination stage, what would Xie Ding think? He would only think that the brothers were not on good terms. The biased Xia Ding would definitely be unhappy with the two brothers. Therefore Xia Changwu and Xia Changchao would definitely think of ways to decline, but Xia Jingxing was a clever person and did not force them and directly goaded them. Yes, it was too strange that Xia Changwu was unwilling to challenge Xia Jingxing but wanted to challenge Shin Miao, who did not have the strength to fend off a chicken. His selfishness was clearly displayed in front of everyone. In order to dispel everyone's thoughts and to prove that he was not trying to climb up the Kai family, Xia Changwu could only go on stage himself and compete with Xia Jingxing. This was a helpless move, but after he agreed, his plan to use Shin Miao to climb up the Kai family would fall through and he would lose. He braced himself to get up. Since older brother has spoken, how can this younger brother not follow? How would Xia Jingxing give him a chance to complain? On the battlefield, whoever he wanted to lose, he would lose without mercy. One person is not enough. He raised his eyebrows. Third younger brother, come up together. Chapter 66. Third brother, let's go together. With Xia Jingxing's words, Xia Changchao below the stage was also stunned. Previously, when he saw Xia Jingxing's sudden appearance, he thought that Xia Jingxing was specially helping Shin Miao out of the predicament. Anyway, this older brother's actions could not be inferred from the perspective of an ordinary person. But Xia Jingxing's words stunned him. The person who went up to challenge was only Xia Changwu, so what did it have to do with him? But now that Xia Ding was not present, Xia Changchao could only look towards Xia Changwu and whispered, "Second older brother, what is going on?" Xia Changwu was usually more astute than Xia Changchao, and when he heard Xia Jingxing's words, he was instantly angered. Xia Jingxing wanted to challenge but said that he alone was not enough and had to add Xia Changchao. What was the meaning of this? This was nothing more than humiliating the two brothers. Xia Jingxing naturally thought that the two brothers were not his opponent even if they joined hands. This was just too arrogant. Xia Changwu, who was angered by Xia Jingxing's words, had long lost his usual calmness. His expression became unfriendly, and his tone seemed to contain some anger. "Big brother, you're full of confidence. You don't even put us in your eyes at all." On the stage, Xia Jingxing was playing with the fruit that he had taken from the examiner's hand. His beautiful eyes narrowed as he lazily said, "Not bad, I indeed did not put you all in my eyes. The two of you have been practicing martial arts since you were young and have never sparred with me. I heard that you are outstanding. How about you let me broaden my horizons today?" He continued. Everyone present seemed to have heard the discord between the Xia brothers. One had to know that the matter of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage had spread throughout the entire Mingqi. All along, everyone had different guesses about the relationship between these few brothers, and Xia Jingxing had always maintained an indifferent attitude towards the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, to the extent that he disdained to talk to the two Shu younger brothers, thus there did not seem to be any waves in this coldness. Today was the first time that Xia Jingxing made his two Shu brothers lose face in front of everyone. The audience started to discuss among themselves. Some of them wanted to watch the show, while others were curious about the result. Shin Miao looked at that casual and handsome youth. This person, Xia Jingxing, was indeed somewhat strange. He seemed willful and indulgent, but there seemed to be a clear line guiding him. Now, the two Xia brothers were being led by the nose by him, and he didn't even realize it. He was afraid that after today's written examination, the two Xia brothers would not be left with a trace of their reputation. When Xia Changwu heard it, he suddenly sneered and said word by word, "Only exchanging pointers, why not?" He looked at Xia Jingxing and there were all kinds of strange emotions in his shrewd eyes. He said, "Since older brother wants to do so, then third younger brother will attack together. I'm afraid that when the time comes, big brother must not say that you're bullying me." He said it so confidently. In other words, if Xia Jingxing lost to them, it was Xia Jingxing who started it first. It had nothing to do with the two of them. Xie Jingxing might even make a fool out of himself. Xie Changchao was still somewhat hesitant, but when he saw Xie Changwu giving him a look, he immediately recovered and said, "Younger brothers will definitely accompany." The most interesting thing about the selection round of the academy examinations was that no matter what kind of people there were, no matter how many people there were, and no matter whether they were male or female, they were all free to choose. Thus Xie Jingxing's request was not in violation of anything. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile, and that evil smile attracted a number of young females' gazes. He jokingly said, "Want to also set up a life and death agreement?" Xie Changchao's and Xie Changwu's bodies stiffened and their faces became somewhat ugly. Xie Jingxing however lazily said, "Just joking. Between brothers, there is no need to fight to the death." Shen Miao's lips also gently hooked up. Xie Jingxing's words were really vicious. Since the two Xie brothers had already gone up the stage, there was nothing for her to do here. She tidied up her dress and went down the stage. At the female side of the banquet, Shen Yu and Shen Qing did not go up to talk, but it was Feng and Ning who quickly ran over. She said, "Your archery skills are actually this good. Could it be that you want a daughter to inherit your father's career?" Shen Miao's heart slightly wavered. Now that the imperial family was eyeing the Shen family covetously, not to mention her, even her eldest brother's situation was extremely dangerous. In the beginning, eldest brother's life was ruined by a female, and now that the Shen family had not fallen apart, she would use her own methods to protect the Shen family. Just like on the stage just now, whoever dared not give the Shen family face, she would not hesitate to return it 100-fold. But among the three people on the stage, who do you think will win? Feng and Ning suddenly changed the topic and rambled on, "Even though the little marquis of the Xie family is famous, but we have not seen it with our own eyes. Perhaps the rumors are not credible. That Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao had obtained first rank last year. 2 against 1, no matter what, it would be the little marquis who would suffer a loss. Xie Jingxing would suffer a loss." Shen Miao laughed in her heart and gently shook her head. Xie Changwu, who was on the stage, also said, "It is not easy for the two of us to judge against you alone, so we will pick a spear." This time, Shen Miao really laughed out loud. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "Spear? Can?" The examiner quickly found 3 fine horses. The high platform was extremely wide, and if it was controlled well, it could almost accommodate the horses galloping freely on it. 3 spears were also thrown into the hands of the 3 people. That Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao know how to use 2 spears. Feng and Ning exclaimed. Xie Chaosun and Xie Changwu had a tacit understanding and were able to combine 2 spears into one and then combine them into one. Using this method, every year they would obtain first rank in the spear examinations. Because of this, Xie Changwu picked this, most likely hoping to crush Xie Jingxing. But in fact, Shen Miao's eyes drooped. Others did not know, but she knew. In the memorials of the Ming Qi's imperial family, there was a memorial that recorded the Xie family's formation on the battlefield. Xie Jingxing was not simple because he could form a formation by himself. 1 line spirit snake formation, 1 spear, 1 horse and 1 person. There were only 3, but they were able to defeat the enemy. This kind of formation was only suitable for the opponent's high-ranking military officers, and Xie Jingxing had never lost before. How could the 2 Xie brothers contend against a country's high-ranking military officer? One feared that they would become a laughingstock today. The drummer hammered the drum heavily, and when the drum sounded, the written examination would begin. Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao looked at each other as the 2 horses galloped side by side. They had gone through rigorous training, and the steps of the horses were almost exactly the same. Drunken Spear's spear moves were also exactly the same. Looking from afar, it was as if one person had split into 2, which was somewhat scary. That purple-clad youth lazily raised his hand, and the black horse under him suddenly raised its hooves and galloped in the opposite direction. Everyone was in an uproar as they saw him holding the spear horizontally in front of him, and his clothes were like purple clouds and lightning. Like a storm, murderous aura instantly overflowed, and that handsome facial features made him look like a jade-faced Azura. Chapter 67. Normally, good-looking and fierce could not be mentioned in the same breath. Just like what those old people said, flowery but impractical moves, good-looking moves would definitely not be powerful, and the truly powerful moves would definitely be very fierce. However, Xie Jingxing was different. He was born handsome and romantic, but when he was crawling on the horse's back with the long spear in front of him, he was like a valiant god of war. That kind of iron blood temperament that was trained in the battlefield made one unable to move their eyes away from him. Strength and beauty, charm and ruthlessness, he was like a beautiful wolf that had a kind of noble and fierce aura that made one's heart palpitate. His purple robes were like flowing clouds and lightning as the horse beneath him galloped. Below him, everyone's blood seemed to be boiling with the sound of the horse's hooves. He had a strange temperament that could cause people to soar. Xie Changchao's and Xie Changwu's eyes followed the purple-clad youth closely, and they also separated. They actually wanted to outflank Xie Jingxing from the left and right, wanting to encircle and annihilate Xie Jingxing. This was really a shameless way of doing things. It was clearly 2 against 1. Everyone at the scene exclaimed one after another. Fu Xiuyi said, "Xie Jingxing is indeed a good seedling of the Xie family. How is it as mysterious as what you said?" Prince Zhou smiled, so stubborn that even Xie Ding could not deal with him. One fear that he is also a devil incarnate. Fu Xiuyi smiled but did not speak. Even though this Xie Jingxing looked stubborn, he was definitely not an easy person to deal with. In the face of absolute strength, schemes and plots were also helpless. The reason why Xie Jingxing put this kind of cynical attitude on the surface was because he had nothing to fear. And what made him fearless? Most likely it was self-confidence. It was different from Prince Zhou's arrogance and was also different from Prince Jing's cautiousness. Fu Xiuyi's evaluation of a person had always been very comprehensive. Thus there were all kinds of people in his advisors. There were those who were talented and learned in broadcasting, and there were also those who looked very unremarkable, high-ranking officials whose families had fallen, and there were also those who were heinous criminals. Only using talent, character, bearing or the attitude of handling matters were not important to him. Xie Jingxing was such a dazzling person, and one really wanted to keep him for one's own use. Unfortunately, he came from the residence of the Marquis of Linan. And the residence of the Marquis of Linan, after all, could not exist in the Ming-Chi's rivers and mountains for too long. Putting down the regret in his heart, Fu Xiuyi continued to look up at the youth on the field. Xie Jingxing was being surrounded by the 2 Xie brothers but agilely dodged left and right. It was like a snake. No matter how airtight Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao's encirclement was, he would always be able to easily pass through. The 2 brothers originally cooperated perfectly with each other with their spears, but under Xie Jingxing's movements, it looked like it was riddled with holes. It was really very comical. Only when there was a contest would one be able to determine who was superior and who was inferior. In the process of fighting, who was superior and who was inferior was a fact that could be seen with a single glance. In front of Xie Jingxing, the 2 Xie brothers were unable to withstand a single blow. Heavens, Bai Wei covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Little Marquis Xie seems to be playing with the Xie brothers." That's right, in comparison. Yi Peilan also exclaimed, "The Xie brothers' rifles look like they are just for show." If the womenfolk could see the facts, how could the male side of the banquet not see it? Xie Jingxing was able to kill in one blow but was deliberately grinding Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao bit by bit. It was as if a lion had caught a rabbit but was not in a hurry to swallow it, but was playing with and torturing it. Little Marquis Xie is really an amazing person. Feng and Ning said, "The Xie brothers' rifles are the thing that they are most proud of, but in comparison, it is like the difference between clouds and mud." One fear that today they will be defeated miserably. Shen Miao looked down at the chess game in front of her. Chapter 68. Not at all. How could this be considered as a miserable defeat? This was just the beginning. She slowly placed the white pieces down and the two black pieces were swallowed in an instant. A small blank space appeared on the chessboard. On the stage, Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao were finally angered. They were like monkeys being played by Xie Jingxing for a long time and their hearts were angry and humiliated. Xie Jingxing was clearly deliberately making it difficult for the two brothers to get off the stage and knew how bad their performance was. Xie Changwu's heart suddenly gave birth to a murderous intent. He stared fiercely at the purple-clad youth in front of him. The youth on the horse was extraordinarily handsome and his smile was very eye-catching. From birth, he was the proud son of heaven of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage. But even so, he was still dismissive of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage. No matter if it was the status of the heir or the favoritism towards Xie Ding. He was like the king of the jungle, a tiger that overbearingly blocked everyone's way of survival. How could one not hate him? In this extremely embarrassing situation, Xie Changwu's perfect mask that he had always maintained was finally on the verge of breaking. He roared loudly and grabbed the long spear as he charged towards Xie Jingxing. At the moment when they passed each other, he viciously stabbed the long spear into the buttocks of Xie Jingxing's horse. Everyone was shocked. In the spear competition, there had never been anyone who attacked the other party's horse. Because the horse was a mount, it was highly possible to injure the other party. Falling from the back of a horse, it was common for one to rest for a month if it was light, while it would be heavy if one's arm or leg was broken or even one's neck was broken. After all, the academy examinations was just a means to evaluate the students and there was no need to be so bloody, so such a situation had never happened before. Xie Changwu's method was really a despicable act. Xie Changchao was also shocked by Xie Changwu's actions but very quickly he understood. Almost without any hesitation, he rode the horse below him and charged towards Xie Jingxing's direction. He actually wanted to trample on Xie Jingxing who had fallen to death. Could it be that these two brothers were crazy? There was only one thought in everyone's mind. Not to mention if this matter would violate the law in Mingqi, but in the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, if the Marquis of Lineage knew of this matter and something happened to Xie Jingxing, would the two Xie brothers be able to escape? The womenfolk cried out in alarm, and the men also sucked in a breath of cold air. The more timid ones had already covered their eyes. Feng and Ning, this pampered female, was so scared that she screamed. Shen Miao's wrist stopped as she looked up at the youth on the stage. The two brothers of the Xie family were indeed not a brilliant opponent. This chess move was too bad and Xie Jingxing. He was destined to not let go of this opportunity. The black horse let out a long neigh and raised its two front hooves high, almost standing upright. Then, it struggled frantically. The purple-clothed youth twirled the long spear in his hand in a beautiful flower, but he kicked the horse's hooves. The long spear was bent horizontally, and the horse's two hooves were fiercely tripped. The handsome horse fell to the ground, but it did not stand up again. Before everyone could react, Xie Jingxing's toes tapped lightly, and without saying a word, he leaped up. His figure was out of this world, and he was as suave as a flying immortal. With a flick of the long spear, Xie Changwu was flipped onto the ground. His other hand casually picked up a stone and flicked it, and it all hit the knee of Xie Changchao's horse. Xie Changchao could not dodge in time and fell down. The two brothers were flipped off their horses in a short moment. Xie Jingxing's foot lazily stepped on Xie Changchao's shoulder, and the other hand pointed the long spear at Xie Changwu's head as he said with a smile that was not a smile, "Even dare to sneak an attack on older brother. Really? Overestimating one's capabilities." Chapter 69. The youth on the stage had a natural grace, and in a day and night, he was able to defeat the enemy. Even though he was not old, his performance was not inferior to those older people. If one were to say that he had the capital to be arrogant, then he indeed had it. As such, the superior and inferior were immediately seen. The young females below the stage were already stunned from watching. They would usually be doing things in the inner courtyard and would not have the chance to see such a scene. It was nothing more than the annual academy examinations that they were able to feast their eyes on. But even the academy examinations of the previous years were far from the brilliance that Xie Jingxing showed this year. Most of the young females admired heroes, and in addition to Xie Jingxing's outstanding appearance and bearing, naturally he won over a batch of hearts. There were some youths who were jealous, but most of them were amazed. Su Mingfeng looked from the pavilion far away and smiled as he shook his head, so the matter that he mentioned was worth celebrating was this. This kid is still as arrogant as before. But Su Mingfeng also knew that what was revealed today was just the tip of the iceberg. Xie Jingxing was a person that was deeply hidden and did not reveal anything. Now that he was like this, did he want to express something to that person's actions? His expression gradually became serious as he was somewhat unable to see through his good friend's decision. That little marquis of the Xie family is indeed extraordinary. There was some worship on Feng and Ning's face. I think that in the entire Ding capital or even the entire Mingqi, there is no one in the younger generation that could be on par with him. Shen Miao shook her head. Xie Jingxing's forte was after all not in competing here. What he was good at was the most refined combat experience. In fact, if he was not harmed by the imperial family of Mingqi in the past lifetime, otherwise with the Xie family's military strength and Xie Jingxing's prestige in the army, he would be able to split half of the Mingqi's imperial family. It was just that. The defeat of the Xie family was still somewhat of a mystery. Shen Miao sighed in her heart. In the past lifetime, she wholeheartedly helped Fu Xiuyi and did not know much about the Xie family's matters. Now she was somewhat at a loss. Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu were angered by Xie Jingxing's words to the point that they wanted to vomit blood. Xie Jingxing's actions looked light, but only the both of them knew how serious his injuries were. But the surrounding people did not sympathize with the Xie brothers at all because Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao had used despicable means to sneak attack. The most important thing in the academy examination was fairness. The actions of the Xie brothers not only made the audience look down on them, but the examiner on the stage also looked down on them. After today, the good reputation that the two of them had previously accumulated would vanish into thin air. What a good plan, Shen Miao said softly as she looked at the purple-clothed youth standing with his arms crossed in front of his chest. Today Xie Jingxing had led the two Xie brothers by the nose, thus the two Xie brothers lost their usual sense of propriety and used underhanded methods to harm others. He had probably woken up by now, but it was already too late. To play tricks in front of everyone, the difference between the Di and Shu sons of the residents of the Marquis of Lin and was very clear today. Xie Jingxing said lazily to the two of them, the victor is already decided. Who else wants to challenge? The audience was silent. Everyone could see how Xie Jingxing dealt with Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao. It was as if he had knocked down two people with a single spear strike, and these two people were the cream of the crop. For a moment, no one spoke. Xie Jingxing casually threw the spear in his hands and said, since there is no one, then one will take one's leave. Finishing, his sleeves fluttered and he disappeared. Naturally there was a burst of exclamation. This fellow's martial arts is not weak. Prince Shou said, but it is useless even if he has good martial arts. He is a hard bone. Pei Lang however sighed in his heart. This imperial family of Mingqi looked astute but their eyes were short-sighted. This youth was deeply hidden and his actions on the stage just now were intentional. Even though one did not know what it was for, but if it was not to establish prestige, then it must be related to the imperial family. He lightly glanced at Prince Shou and Prince Jing. If the imperial family were to go against Xie Jingxing, one feared that they would be in a difficult situation in the future. Because that was a lion. Just like Shen Miao just now. Even though the examiner was helpless when Xie Jingxing left on his own accord, he still announced his first rank as usual. The servants of the Xie family's two brothers quickly helped both of them down and were too embarrassed to even greet them as they dejectedly boarded the horse carriage and left. For the following few challenges, because of Xie Jingxing's outstanding performance, the others looked very boring and there was no longer any excitement like just now. Thus everyone kept yawning when they saw it. Shen Yu and Shen Qing would look up at Shen Miao from time to time. Today in the Shen family, other than Shen Miao, Shen Qing and Shen Yu were considered to have been overshadowed. Because of Fu Xiuyi's relationship, Shen Qing had long hated Shen Miao to the point that she gritted her teeth and felt that Shen Miao had snatched something that belonged to her. As for Shen Yu, she was stubbornly haggling over the fact that Shen Miao had outshone her and her heart was extremely unwilling. Shen Miao did not know the thoughts of both of them and even if she knew, she would not bother to haggle over it. She instructed Guyu to come to her side and whispered a few words to her. When Guyu heard it, her expression became stern and she quickly retreated quietly. At the same time, Prince Yu who was at the male side of the banquet waved his hands and a guard appeared by his side. After respectfully listening to Prince Yu's orders, that guard quickly disappeared from the banquet like a shadow. In the distant pavilion, Xie Jingxing finally reappeared by Su Mingfeng's side. Su Mingfeng clapped a few times and squinted at him. Why? Are you in the limelight in the Ding capital today? Small matter. Xie Jingxing said indifferently. You are preparing to take action to tidy up the two younger brothers? Su Mingfeng asked. It is not your style to suddenly take action. Receiving pointers from others. Xie Jingxing raised his brows. For some things, the earlier the better. After staying for too long, I also cannot wait. Su Mingfeng frowned. He felt that Xie Jingxing's words clearly had other meanings. But he wisely did not ask more. Even though he had many years of friendship with this childhood friend, but the other party had some mysterious background and he would never probe further. His gaze suddenly stopped below for a moment before he said, but the young lady that you just saved seemed to be in some trouble. Xie Jingxing's eyes swept past and saw that at the female side of the banquet, there was a guard handing an invitation to second Furen of the Shen family, Ren Wanyun, but his eyes were faintly glancing at the purple-clad young female. Ren Wanyun held the invitation and was somewhat agitated. His Highness Prince Yu's actions really make this official's wife's heart terrified. Fifth lady, still not coming over to thank Prince Yu's invitation? Shen Miao's eyes congealed and she stared at Ren Wanyun, and her lips hooked up into a sneer. Really want to play the same old trick again? Facing Shen Yu's and Shen Qing's gloating gaze, she lazily stretched her waist and there was a bit of darkness in her clear eyes. All right. Her lips hooked up, I will definitely thank him properly. A flash of interest appeared in Xie Jingxing's eyes. There is a good show to watch. Chapter 70. On the carriage back to the Shen residence, Shen Miao still sat alone in the carriage. Gu Yu and Jing Zhe who were by her side were worried for her. That Prince Yu of the first rank's notoriety was known to the entire Ming Qi, but he sent an invitation to Shen Miao. Not to say that it was inappropriate for a young lady like Shen Miao to go, anyone with discerning eyes could see what Prince Yu of the first rank had in mind. If Shen Xian was here, he would definitely reject it with all his might. But now that Shen Xian was not here, the two Shen family's sisters-in-law had ulterior motives. In the past when Shen Miao was urinating, now with Shen Miao's age, she was able to think about marriage, so naturally the idea was placed on her head. Jing Zhe endured and endured but finally could not help but said, Young lady, that Prince Yu of the first rank. What about today's matter? Why don't we send someone to write a letter to Master? If Master knows about this, he will definitely rush back. Yes. Gu Yu was also deeply worried. That person did not come with good intentions and now in the inner courtyard. Moreover, young lady was in the limelight today, one feared that there would be a lot of trouble in the residence. She sighed. Shen Miao was originally young and could not see anything, but Gu Yu and Jingzhe, the two maids that Shen Furen specially picked for Shen Miao, could see it clearly. It was obvious that the second and third household were jealous of the first household's reputation, thus they would openly and secretly trip up Shen Miao. With the narrow-minded hearts of these two households, with Shen Miao in the limelight today, one feared that she would become a thorn in their eyes. She was not afraid of other things, but if Prince Yu of the first rank was involved. If he had any crooked ideas, it would be hard for Shen Miao to deal with it. After all, most of the people in the first branch had been replaced by the other two branches. Shen Miao lightly said, "What is there to be afraid of? Whatever ideas he has, it all depends on whether he has the ability or not." She was calm and composed, but the words she spat out seemed to carry a faint dignity, as well as a trace of imperceptible ruthlessness. Gu Yu and Jingzhe looked at each other. They did not know what was going on, but the panic just now had dissipated a little and gradually calmed down. Upon returning to the Shen residence, Shen Miao only said that she was tired today and needed to rest, so she said that she would return to the western courtyard first. Ren Wanyun and Chen Roqiu smiled as they spoke to Shen Miao, and instructed her to rest well. Perhaps they knew that it would not be good for Shen Miao if Prince Yu took a fancy on her, so both of their smiles were unable to conceal their joy in others' misfortune. Ren Wanyun even touched Shen Miao's head and said intimately, "Seeing that fifth lady has reached such an old age and is so charming. It won't be long before I get married." "Yes." Chen Roqiu also echoed meaningfully, "A young lady like our little five can only be matched with those of noble status. An ordinary family would never be able to marry our little five." A trace of joy flashed across Shen Yu's face. Shen Qing could not wait to open her mouth. "Of course, fifth younger sister will definitely get a very respectable Lang Jun." After saying that, she covered her mouth and giggled. As she giggled, she looked at Shen Miao with understanding eyes. But even under such a suggestive gaze, Shen Miao's expression did not waver at all. Shen Qing's smile stiffened. The more Shen Miao appeared to be calm, the more annoyed she was in her heart. Everyone was well aware of the invitation that Prince Yu sent today, which meant that he had taken a fancy on Shen Miao. But now that Shen Miao was not moved, one feared that she still did not know the severity of it. A trace of ridicule flashed in her eyes. She was really a fool. Zhengzhen, an older sister, had said it before. Shen Miao spoke in a neither salty nor light manner. "In terms of age, eldest sister and second older sister are slightly older than me. Naturally it would not be my turn to be the first to look for a Lang Jun." The few of them paused for a moment before Ren Wanyun smiled, "You this child. Sigh. It is all because eldest Bo is not in the capital. Zhengzhen also love you dearly. As for eldest sister and second older sister, your third Shen and I are in the Ding capital, so naturally there is no need to worry." "Is it?" Shen Miao gently asked back. Her pair of clear eyes did not seem to have any expression, but it made one's heart tremble. It was as if when one was looked at by that pair of eyes, one's thoughts would not be able to hide. She smiled gently, "Since Zhengzhen are so worried about me, in the future I will have to repay one or two." She said it lightly, but Ren Wanyun and Chen Roqiu did not know why, but a trace of uneasiness flashed in their hearts. But they immediately threw this absurd thought to the back of their minds. Even though Shen Miao was a little clearer now, but she was after all a 14-year-old little girl, how big of a wave could she create? Moreover, thinking of Prince Yu's matter, both of them were somewhat proud. "Sigh, fifth lady need not be so polite. We are all one family." Ren Wanyun smiled, "Since you are tired, then go back and rest first. Your second Shen and I still have some matters to do. Gu Yu, Jingzhe, protect fifth young lady well." Gu Yu and Jingzhe complied and left with Shen Miao. After they left, Ren Wanyun and Chen Roqiu looked at each other and saw the schemes in each other's eyes. After half an incense stick of time, Rong Jing Tang's old Shinfuren frowned. You all say that Prince Yu of the first rank has taken a fancy to fifth girl? Shen Yu and Shen Qing were banished to the inner hall as it was inconvenient for them young ladies to participate in these matters. Even so, both of them still secretly ran behind the screen and ignored Zhang Mama's dissuasion to eavesdrop on the conversation in the hall. Not bad. Ren Wanyun's face was full of smiles, but her words were dignified. Fifth girl's results in today's academy examinations was brilliant and made Prince Yu to have a whole new level of respect for her. Since the invitation was sent, it means that he has the intention to have fifth girl. Daughter-in-law C, one fear that our Shen residents can also have a Qin Wang Fei. When Chen Roqiu heard that, the corner of her lips twitched. This Ren Wanyun's words were dignified, but that Prince Yu of the first rank had taken a fancy to Shen Miao but did not say that he wanted to marry her officially. Moreover, even if he really married her, with Shen Miao's life, one did not know how long she could last. One feared that she would not be able to be a Wang Fei for a few days before the fragrance and jade perished. After all, the notoriety of Prince Yu of the first rank was known by everyone in the Ding capital. Hearing that, old Shinfuren's expression sank a little. In her heart, she naturally did not wish for the first household to do well. Why should the son of that person who had died for many years be better than hers? Previously, when the old general was still alive, he favored the first household, and now that the first household wanted to have a Wang Fei, it really made her extremely unhappy. She immediately said, with fifth girl's temperament, how can she be a Wang Fei? Eldest girl or second girl is more like it. Old Shinfuren stayed in the inner courtyard all year round and only knew how to enjoy. She really did not know anything about the matters outside. Hearing her words, Chen Roqiu's and Ren Wanyun's expressions changed at the same time. Shen Yu and Shen Qing, who were hiding behind the screen, also jumped in shock. One must know that old Shinfuren did not know, but both of them knew. Upon entering the residence of Prince Yu, there was only the situation of being tortured to death, and it was a hellish fire pit. Ren Wanyun quickly spoke, "Mother, it is not like this. We naturally wish for fifth girl to be well. Even though His Highness Prince Yu is a widower and older in age and his reputation is not very good, but fortunately his family is good." She thought of something and her lips hooked up. In the future, when seventh son grows up, it would be better to have His Highness Prince Yu to take care of him. If fifth girl had any mishap, His Highness Prince Yu would take more care of seventh son as compensation. To actually use Shen Miao's life to exchange for Shen Yuanbo's future. Chen Roqiu glanced at her second sister-in-law. It was indeed a good scheme. Chapter 71. Since Ren Wanyun had already said it like that, old Shinfuren was not that stupid to not understand the meaning behind Ren Wanyun's words. Hearing Ren Wanyun's tone, that Prince Yu of the first rank was a devil-like character, and if Shen Miao fell into his hands, it would only be a nicer sounding name. The one who really benefited was the Shen family. As for Shen Yuanbo, he was indeed old Shinfuren's darling. To use Shen Miao to pave the way for Shen Yuanbo, this idea was in line with old Shinfuren's intentions. Since that is the case, since both of you said it correctly, then listen that Prince Yu of the first rank is indeed fifth girl's husband. Old Shinfuren's skin was extremely thick, and to say such words while sitting upright, it made a flash of contempt in Chen Roqiu's eyes. Mother also feel that it is good. Ren Wanyun's ability to lie through her teeth was not bad and immediately said, "This daughter-in-law is picking a in-laws for little five, naturally one cannot pick one with low status. Prince of the first rank residence, that is really climbing up a high branch." Old Shinfuren nodded her head when she heard it and immediately thought of something. Then did the residents of the first rank send someone to talk about it? Ren Wanyun's face twitched. Even though she was not someone who was easy to deal with, she did not think that this old woman would be so anxious that she could not wait to decide on Shen Miao's marriage. Of course it would be better for this marriage to be settled as soon as possible, else it would be bad when Shen Xian returned. But even if the dust had settled, Shen Xian would not necessarily allow Shen Miao to marry into the residence of the first rank. Thus it was necessary to use some unusual means. Fortunately, the people from the residence of the first rank did not intend to marry openly. That Prince Yu of the first rank liked to use some tricks. Naturally, it would not be known by others. Mother, it is still too early. Ren Wanyun smiled. Little Five is still young and there is no need to be anxious. If it is settled like this, others would inevitably talk about it. Let the two of them get along for a while, and when both are mutually in love and Little Five is willing, then we will then propose the marriage. In this way no one would say that we forced Little Five. Even if Shin Miao was a fool, it was impossible for her to be mutually in love with Prince Yu. If it was like this, it would be nothing more than covering up those ugly intentions with beautiful words. One did not know what would happen in the middle. Chen Roqiu quietly smiled but did not speak. Even though she wanted to see Shin Miao fall into misfortune, she was cautious by nature. It was better to leave this matter to Ren Wanyun. In the future, if Shin Xian really wanted to investigate, he would not be able to trace it back to her. Chen Roqiu was best at sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight. Behind the screen, Shin Yu and Shin Qing had some fear in their hearts. They did not expect that in just a few short sentences, Shin Miao's lifelong event was decided. To a female, a husband meant happiness for the rest of her life, and Shin Miao was destined to be unlucky. But Shin Yu and Shin Qing did not have a trace of sympathy for Shin Miao. In the officialdom, Shin Xian suppressed their father, and in terms of status, Shin Miao suppressed them sisters. In addition to old Shin Furen's influence, the first household was just a thorn in their eyes. Seeing Shin Miao fall into misfortune, they could only rejoice in her misfortune. Even though old Shin Furen did not know anything about housekeeping, she was proficient in the fights between the females in the inner courtyard. Especially these sinister means. Initially she was able to become the matriarch of the general's residence from a small singing girl, not only because of her seductive face, her means were naturally ruthless. Thus after listening to Ren Wanyun's words, she understood the meaning behind it and smiled. Oh, as such, then let fifth girl get closer to Prince Yu. Indeed, this kind of matter, if we really forced fifth girl, it would not be beautiful if eldest brother got angry. Her current appearance was already mean, and to put on this kind of loving attitude, it would only make one feel that she was like a weasel squeezing a smile, with malicious intentions. Shin Yu and Shin Qing shivered at the same time and quickly retreated far away from the screen. In the western courtyard, under the oil lamp, Shin Miao sat quietly. There was a piece of snow-white parchment in front of her. There was nothing on it, but the brush and ink had already been ground. It seemed that she wanted to write, but after a moment, she sighed softly and put the parchment away. It was good to prepare for a rainy day, but now she was just an unmarried daughter and could only rely on a lot of information that she had grasped. But these things, on the current her, could not bring out the greatest effect. Sure enough, the road still had to be walked out step by step. Gu Yu and Jingzhe saw her sighing and thought that she was thinking about Prince Yu's matter. Gu Yu went forward to comfort her. Young lady, please be at ease. If that side really have any malicious intentions, these servants will protect young lady even at the risk of our names. If it really cannot be done, in the capital, it is not that there are no families that are on good terms with master. At most. Shin Miao shook her head. The residence of the prince of first rank has a high position of power and is also protected by the imperial family. No matter how good father's relationship with others is, he would not risk the danger of becoming enemies with the imperial family to protect me. Not only that, the imperial family was eyeing the Shin family covetously, and if one were to act rashly, it would make the suspicious imperial family of Ming Qi suspect that Shin Xian was colluding with others. After all, it was not a good thing for any emperor to have one's own officials walking too close to each other. Or else it is better to write a letter to master. Jingzhe said, even though master has military duties, but eldest young master is only attached to the army and did not have any orders to transfer. If one were to return to the Ding capital, one would not be punished by the higher-ups. With eldest young master around, he would be able to protect young lady. Eldest brother would need more than a month to rush back from the northwest region, so how would he be able to make it in time? do you think that they will endure for that long? Shen Miao said lightly. Shen Xian's deterrence would make them take action in the shortest time possible. Using raw rice to cook rice and with a few words of intimidation, one would be able to make her obediently obey. Perhaps Shen Miao would, but Empress Shen, who was bathed in blood and tears in the inner palace, would never. Then what can be done? Gu Yu's and Jingzhe's expressions changed greatly. Even though they knew that the matter was not good, they did not think that it would be so serious. With Prince Yu's methods, any young lady that he fancied in the Ding capital, even if they were from a high-ranking official's family, would be defiled. At the end the imperial family would come out to appease them, but there was nothing that could be done. Because this person's methods were evil and biased, one could not see anything on the surface, but at the end it was those young ladies who suffered. What to do? Others are unreliable. Shen Miao looked at the dancing fire. It is better to rely on oneself. But young lady. Gu Yu was somewhat anxious. How could Shen Miao protect herself? If it was others, perhaps one's family could resist one or two, but the second and third household might have formed an alliance with the other party. I have my own ways. Shen Miao played with the paperweight in her hands. The residence of Prince Yu of the first rank relied on the emperor's kindness and the imperial family was willing to protect it. If the imperial family was not willing to protect him, so what if there were enemies that came looking for him? TSK, a residence of the first rank that lost the imperial family's protection was just a pile of mud. Prince Yu of the first rank had some blood relation with the imperial family, so she would start with him first. Conveniently, she looked outside and saw a vague figure moving outside the window. Who else could it be if it was not Gue Momo? At the same time, she would also clean up the unclear dregs in the western courtyard. Chapter 72. After this year's chrysanthemum banquet, the main topic of discussion in the streets and alleys of the Ding capital had finally changed its name. The little Xie Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin used an extremely strong stance to extinguish the prestige of the two Shu brothers. Even though he was arrogant in his actions, but in a short period of time, he displayed a graceful bearing which made people understand that the name of the jade-faced Azura on the battlefield was not an undeserved reputation. The other person was the idiot Shen Miao. It was as if she had been reborn, or perhaps it was because the blood in the Shen family's bones had finally been aroused. The stupid and cowardly Shen Miao had faded away, and Kai Lin did not make a sound when confronting Kai Lin. His aggressive and fierce temperament made the youths and young ladies of the same generation rather fearful. As such, in Guangwentang, those who ridiculed her previously had restrained themselves a little. When Kai Lin came to Guangwentang again, he stared at Shen Miao with an unkind expression, but for the first time, he did not act rashly. It seemed that Shen Miao had left a shadow on him that day. Feng and Ning looked at Kai Lin's appearance and smiled. One did not think that the overlord would be somewhat afraid of you now. Shen Miao glanced at Kai Lin and the latter quickly turned his eyes away with a somewhat fearful look. She laughed in her heart. In her eyes, Kai Lin was only an arrogant and mischievous young master, and she did not want to waste more effort on this. Moreover, the Kai family was not far from being annihilated, and in the future this noble young master would have to suffer a lot. But one heard that the two Xie brothers were seriously injured, but the Marquis of Lin did not pursue the fault of the little Xie Marquis. Even though a physician was invited for the two brothers to recuperate, it was considered as grounding. Feng and Ning sighed. It seems that the Marquis of Lin's favoritism towards the D son is indeed a fact. Shen Miao asked, "Where did you get to know about it?" "Eavesdropping on my father and mother's conversation." Feng and Ning was somewhat proud, but if it was another person, most likely they would also dote on the little Xie Marquis. Not to mention him, he is the son of Princess Yuqing who has the imperial bloodline. Shen Miao raised her brows. To be honest, she always felt that the death of Princess Yuqing of the residence of the Marquis of Lin was somewhat fishy. With the attitude of the Marquis of Lin towards the two Xie brothers, there was no reason to let Madame Fang live peacefully until now. As she pondered, she saw Pei Lang walk in. There was a gentle smile on Pei Lang's face and coincidentally looked towards Shen Miao's direction. Meeting Shen Miao's gaze, Pei Lang could not help but be slightly surprised. At the chrysanthemum banquet, Shen Miao's performance finally made Pei Lang put away his contempt. From then on, he also began to feel that Shen Miao was not ordinary, and he also sensitively felt that Shen Miao seemed to be secretly paying attention to him. Although he did not know why, it made this young gentleman a little uncomfortable, as if he was being stared at. But when he thought that no matter how powerful Shen Miao was, she was still a budding young female, he felt that he was thinking too much. "Why do you keep staring at him?" Feng and Ning said curiously and immediately thought of something and turned pale with fright. "Could it be that you admire him again?" Now that Shen Miao did not mention anything about Fu Xiuyi, she was so cold that it was as if she had forgotten about this person, and this made those people who were watching the bustle to realize something. Most likely Shen Miao knew that she was not worthy of the imperial family and had gradually given up on the idea. It could be seen from the fact that she did not chase after Fu Xiuyi at the chrysanthemum banquet. Even though Pei Lang's status was lower, he had an elegant demeanor and was knowledgeable, thus it was natural for young females to like him. Shen Miao had some headaches and retracted her gaze. "Of course not." She was only thinking that since Pei Lang did not speak about the circulation of law at the chrysanthemum banquet, then Fu Xiuyi did not put it in his heart. But this person was after all a hidden danger, and if in the future Fu Xiuyi was to use him. Shen Miao's face sunk as she feared that there would be endless troubles in the future. It was just that she did not have the ability to kill Pei Lang without anyone knowing, so she could only find another way. At this moment in the Ding capital's 100 fragrant lu, there were songs and dances celebrating peace. Even if it was daytime, the gauze curtains and luminous pearls that were placed everywhere made the entire building overflowing with color. Music and bamboo flutes were in the air, and occasionally there would be people stopping outside, but they could only look at it with envy. Not for other reasons, when ordinary wealthy families entered the 100 fragrant lu, they would be somewhat embarrassed. Even a small pot of tea was expensive, and it was a veritable money-squandering den. At this moment, at the side of the window, there was a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious clothing. This man's clothing was of the highest quality, but he looked sinister and dark and skinny. Under the robe, there was an empty left leg, and it was Prince Yu of the first rank. "Have you made it clear with that Shen family?" After a long while, he asked in a gloomy tone. "Replying to your highness, it has already been arranged with second Furen of the Shen family. 3 days later the Shen family's females will go to Wulong Temple to offer incense, at that time." 3 days. Prince Yu frowned and a trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. Then he waved his hands. "Go and prepare the things that should be prepared." This prince had not met such an interesting person for a long time. For so many years, his temperament was evil and cruel, and the number of females that died in his hands was uncountable. But no matter how those females resisted, they were unable to stir up any waves. In the entire Mingqi, he had long known of Shen Xian's fierce name. He did not know what kind of taste was that awe-inspiring great general's daughter. And that day at the chrysanthemum banquet, Shen Miao's ruthlessness made him very interested. A wild cat that knew how to resist, perhaps it would be more interesting than those wooden beauties. He licked his lips and a trace of evil flashed in his eyes. Opposite the room closest to him, there was a white-clad male sitting in front of the glass table. He was about 20+ years old and was handsome with a very gentle temperament. After listening attentively for a while, he then said to the person in front like he was watching a good show, "It seems that the young lady that you saved most likely is in trouble again." Opposite him, the purple-clad youth sat lazily and casually said, "The Shen family's tree is big enough to attract the wind. This is also Shen Xian's fault. Now it is only a test, but there will be a day when no one in the Shen family will be able to protect it." The white-clad male paused and suddenly looked at the youth. "Third Xia, why did you do that previously to injure the Shu younger brother in the academy examinations? Could it be that your plan is to be brought forward?" The person sitting opposite him was not someone else but Xie Jingxing. His lips hooked up into a smile. "So what if it is brought forward or not? If you take action in advance. Do they know about it? The white-clad male asked hesitantly. Gao Yang, you do not understand one thing. Now here, I have the final say. Xie Jingxing said lightly, the longer it drags on, the more disadvantageous it is for me. If the mountain does not come to me, then I will go to the mountain. When he said the last sentence, his eyes deepened and he did not look like a 17 or 18-year-old youth anymore. The male named Gao Yang was surprised for a moment before smiling bitterly, never mind. I only came over to look at you. But in fact, I really do not have the confidence to stop you. He changed the topic, but 3 days later, you also need to go to a long temple to investigate some things. Perhaps you can save the beauty again. He smiled mischievously. Gao Yang, your eyesight is as bad as always. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows, that Shen family's girl is not one to be provoked. Chapter 73. After school, Shen Yu walked in front of Shen Miao and said with a smile, today young lady Yi invited me and eldest sister to the residence and will not go back with you. Fifth younger sister, you should return first. Yi Pei Lan and Shen Yu were naturally close and only ignored Shen Miao when she sent them invitations. It was a common thing in the family. Hearing that, Shen Miao did not have much reaction and only responded with a sound. These few days the Shen family's attitude towards Shen Miao was extremely warm and one would know that they were definitely planning something. Shen Miao was also too lazy to bother with them as the urgent matter now was naturally not these trivial matters. On the way back, the horse carriage had to pass through the most prosperous street in the Ding capital. Guyu said, in front is the osmanthus flower workshop. Does not young lady like the flaky cakes there the most? This servant will go and buy some back. Go. Shen Miao said with a smile. After Guyu got off the carriage, Jingzhe opened the curtain of the carriage and looked out. When her gaze passed by a place, she made an "ee" sound. Shen Miao followed her gaze and saw that the horse carriage stopped at the side of the osmanthus flower workshop. There was a pawn shop and there were a lot of people surrounding it, as if they were arguing about something. The pawnshop assistant seemed to be somewhat impatient and his voice was so loud that even Shen Miao could hear it clearly, said 10 taels of silver, if you want to sell it or not. It is only a sword. Gentlemen need not make things difficult for us. It seems that there was no business with the shopkeeper. Jingzhe said. Shen Miao could also see that the pawn shop was doing business and naturally the price would be lower and it was obvious that this was an unacceptable price for the person who came to pawn but was unwilling to leave, thus there was a stalemate. There is nothing to see. Seeing Shen Miao shifting her gaze, Jingzhe put down the curtain of the carriage. After a moment, Guyu came back with 2 big paper bags and Jingzhe opened the curtain to let her in. The moment the curtain was opened, Shen Miao's gaze landed outside of the carriage and saw that the person who was arguing with the pawnshop assistant turned around and walked out of the crowd with a sword in his hand. Most likely he did not manage to close the business as his expression was somewhat dejected. After Guyu got on the carriage, she wanted to close the curtain but was stopped by Shen Miao. She carefully stared at the person who was holding the sword. It was a young man who was dressed ordinarily and his looks were even more ordinary. Seeing their young lady staring at this strange male, Guyu and Jingzhe were somewhat baffled. Shen Miao frowned. Why was this person so familiar? The young man shook his head and sighed. He looked deeply at the sword in his bosom and clenched his teeth. He turned around and walked back to the pawnshop. It seemed that he had finally made up his mind to complete that unsatisfactory business deal. Guyu. The moment he turned around, Shen Miao suddenly shouted, go down and stop him. Tell him that I want his sword. Young lady. Jingzhe and Guyu looked at her in surprise as they really did not know what Shen Miao was doing. Hurry. Shen Miao said coldly. Seeing her serious expression, Guyu did not dare to ask more and immediately jumped off the carriage and walked towards that young man. Just as the young man took a step forward, he heard someone behind him say, young master, please wait. He turned around and saw a woman dressed like a maid smiling at him. Young master, are you going to the pawn shop to pawn your sword? The young man was startled, but he didn't hide it and said, that's right. That female continued, coincidentally, my young lady wants the sword in your hands. Is young master willing to make this deal? The young man glanced at the other party and saw that the female's expression did not seem to be fake, but he still shook his head. This sword of mine is not exquisite, but it is better in terms of practicality. If your noble residence's young lady wants it, it is better to go to the weapon shop to forge one. He was also surprised in his heart. How would an ordinary female be interested in these swords? It was nothing more than looking at it for fun. Unfortunately, his sword was too sharp and it would not be good if he accidentally hurt himself. Guyu's expression eased up slightly and her heart also sighed in admiration. This person in front of her was obviously in urgent need of money, but he was still thinking of the other party. It seemed that he was an upright person. Previously, when Shen Miao inexplicably wanted to buy this person's sword, she was still somewhat worried, but now it seemed that the other party was not a bad person. Thinking of this, Guyu's expression became softer as she said, my young lady sincerely wants to make this business deal with young master. Young master might as well step aside to talk. The other party most likely did not expect Guyu to be this stubborn, and after glancing at the pawn shop, he helplessly nodded, all right. When they reached an empty alley, one saw a horse carriage parked in the alley. Guyu walked to the front of the horse carriage and softly said, young lady, he is here. The young man walked to the front of the horse carriage and hesitated for a moment before finally cupping his fists. This young lady, this one's sword is indeed not suitable for females to use. It is too heavy and too sharp and would easily injure oneself, so, what is your name? Before he finished speaking, a female's voice was heard from the horse carriage. This voice did not sound old, but there was an indescribable feeling, as if it was a person who had experienced ups and downs of a high position, making one unable to determine the age of the person. This one is Mo Qing. After hesitating for a moment, the young man cupped his fists. After this sentence, there was no response for a long time. Just when that young man called Mo Qing and Guyu were somewhat puzzled, a female's voice was heard from inside, I am not interested in your sword. Broken iron to me does not have any meaning. Hearing this, a trace of anger appeared on Mo Qing's face as he said, could it be that young lady is playing with Mo Qing? Even though this sword's quality is average, it was forged by a famous sword master and accompanied me for many years. If young lady called this one over just to insult, then forgive this one for not accompanying. Finishing, he turned around and was about to leave, but just as he lifted his feet, he heard a sigh coming from the horse carriage. That sigh was light, but it seemed to contain an inexplicable emotion that made one's heart clench for no reason. Mo Qing, you are lacking in money. The person in the horse carriage said. Mo Qing was surprised for a moment. He did not know why, but when the other person called his name, a strange feeling suddenly rose in his heart. That feeling was very familiar but also somewhat inexplicable. But the moment he heard the other person's words, his footsteps involuntarily stopped, as if he could not reject every word that the other person said. Your sword is indeed not worth mentioning to me, but your swordsmanship is worth hundreds of gold, even thousands of gold. Mo Qing was startled for a moment before shaking his head, young lady has overpraised. This one is only an ordinary person. But his heart was surprised as how did this person know that his swordsmanship was outstanding? A single coin stumps a hero. Even the treasured sword that accompanied you for so many years had to be sold. This kind of days is really a waste of your swordsmanship. The curtain of the horse carriage was suddenly lifted and a purple-clad young female walked out. Her appearance was young and delicate, but there was a rare noble and dignified air between her brows. Mo Qing, are you willing to sell all your martial arts skills to my Shen family? She asked with a smile, and her eyes had a faint joy of meeting an old friend. The commander of the guards in the previous life, Mo Qing, it is really. How have you been? Chapter 74. This young lady. Mo Qing was slightly startled and frowned as he looked at the young female in front of him. He knew that some rich families did not treat human lives as human lives, and buying a servant was like buying a livestock. At this moment this young female's meaning was most likely to see him as one of those servants, and naturally there was a kind of displeasure in his heart. But when he looked at the other's eyes, the displeasure was like a fog that instantly dissipated. The gaze that the other person looked at him with was not one of arrogance and disdain, but had a touch of gratification and respect. This made his heart unknowingly become suspicious, and he subconsciously blurted out, "Has young lady and this one met before?" Shen Miao gently sighed, "Never." "Then why? Your distinguished self's brows are upright and have an extraordinary bearing. You must be a person with great opportunities. But now that you have sold off the sword that accompanied you for so many years, it is obvious that you are at the end of your road. You are in dire need of money, but even if you are given money today, it would not solve future troubles. I am the daughter of the formidable great general. When my father returns to the capital at the end of the year, I can introduce you to him. It is a pity that your distinguished self's good martial arts skills would be buried in vain." General Shen. Mo Qing was suddenly surprised. He did not think that the young female in front of him was Shen Xian's daughter. Shen Xian's prestige was known by everyone in Mingqi. He was a stabilizing stone on the battlefield, and a man should make contributions. If one was to follow such a general. Mo Qing seemed to feel that the blood in his body had instantly become boiling hot. It was just that. In the rumors in the Ding capital, Shen Miao was an out-and-out idiot. Even though it seemed to have been redeemed at the chrysanthemum banquet a few days ago, there were not many who personally saw it. At this moment it seemed that the rumors were not necessarily true. If young lady is really willing to introduce this one will naturally not decline. If there is an opportunity in the future, one will definitely repay. Mo Qing was also a frank and straightforward person, and with this opportunity, he did not shirk. Seeing this scene, Shen Miao gently smiled and took out an ingot of silver from her sleeves and threw it to Mo Qing. She said, "I do not need you to repay, and just treat it as you selling all your martial arts skills to me. Father will only return at the end of the year, and these days, you need to follow me back to the Shen residence. I will pretend to let you be a guard of the Shen residence, but you have to secretly protect me." When her words fell into Mo Qing's ears, there was naturally some surprise. Mo Qing had also heard that the large clans were flowery on the surface, but in private there were many dirty tricks. Seeing that Shen Miao had mentioned her own safety, one knew that the young female in front of him was not as comfortable as she looked in the Shen residence. Mo Qing was somewhat surprised in his heart. Since Shen Miao was Shen Xian's daughter, why was her situation so difficult? However, his temperament was calm, so he didn't ask. He only said, "I'll listen to Mrs. instructions. Take this silver and go to the emergency room first." Shen Miao said, "After settling your matters, you must come to the Shen residence within 3 days. I will naturally arrange your whereabouts." Mo Qing cupped his fists again. The atmosphere of the Jianghu on him was quite heavy, and after he left, Gu Yu and Jingzhe both frowned. Jingzhe said, "Young lady, this person is unclear, and if he harbors evil intentions, one fear that after entering the residence, Shen Miao walked towards the carriage. What is there to be afraid of? This kind of person is much cleaner than the people in the courtyard." At the moment, the west courtyard was filled with the spies of the second and third branch. Their own people were pitifully few. Moreover, this Mo Qing was naturally not a stranger. Shen Miao sat in the carriage and sighed in her heart. After Rebirth, she did not expect to meet Mo Qing here. This Mo Qing was the commander of the Imperial Guards in his previous life and was recommended by Shen Xian as his martial arts skills were outstanding. When Shen Miao went to the Qin country as a hostage for a few years, Mo Qing protected her as a guard. If it was not for Mo Qing's help, it would be difficult for her to return from the dangerous Qin country in one piece. Mo Qing was loyal to Shen Xian and naturally was loyal to Shen Miao. Unfortunately, after Shen Miao returned to Ming Qi, because of the fight between Mei Furen and Shen Miao, Mei Furen schemed against Imo Qing and gave him the crime of being frivolous with the females in the palace. Fu Xiuyi had long wanted to get rid of Shen Xian's people, and Shen Miao tried every possible way to stop him, but it was to no avail. She could only watch Imo Qing die under the baseless charges. Now seeing Imo Qing again, she did not know that Imo Qing was in such a difficult situation. But it was because of Imo Qing's difficult situation that he was easily subdued. Shen Miao understood Imo Qing's character, and he was the most loyal and upright person. For the trip to Wulong Temple 3 days later, she originally wanted to use other methods, but with Imo Qing, it was much more convenient. Upon returning to the Shen residence, because Shen Yu and Shen Qing went to the Yi residence as guests, there was only Shen Miao in the residence. Just reaching the western courtyard, Gue Momo came forward and said with a flattering smile, "Young lady has returned. This old servant let the kitchen make some sugar soup. Does young lady want to have some?" "All right," Shen Miao said. Seeing that Shen Miao, who had treated her coldly these days, suddenly had a pleasant countenance, Gue Momo's heart was delighted and quickly said, "This old servant will bring it over." When Gue Momo brought the sugar soup over, Shen Miao had already rested in the room for a while. Gue Momo carefully placed the sugar soup on the table and said with a smile, "Young lady, the things needed for the trip to Wulong Temple 3 days later are all prepared. Is there anything else that you need?" Old Shen Furen had previously arranged to go to Wulong Temple 3 days later to offer incense and pray for the peace of the Shen family residence. Ren Wanyun would bring 3 young ladies along, and the rest of the people need not follow. Gue Momo had been busy with this matter these few days. Shen Miao swept a glance at her and said in a neither light nor heavy tone, "Momo is really enthusiastic about this matter." Gue Momo was sluggish for a moment before smiling. "It is rare for young lady to go out of the courtyard, so naturally one must be well prepared." With Momo following, naturally it is well prepared. Shen Miao suddenly smiled. When that smile fell into Gue Momo's eyes, it made her heart somewhat uneasy. Second Furen's arrangements are proper, so naturally there would not be any mistakes. Gue Momo said. Then one will trouble Gue Momo to thank Second Shen on my behalf. Shen Miao nodded her head, "You may withdraw." Hearing that, Gue Momo then heaved a sigh of relief and quickly said a few words before retreating. One did not know why, but the current Shen Miao had become very strange. It was as if there was an invisible pressure when she was with her, causing her arrogance to extinguish by a few points. But when she was out of the door, she straightened her back and swept a disdainful glance around the room before whispering in a voice that only she could hear, "After 3 days, see if you still dare to be insolent in front of this old one." In the room, Shen Miao held the bowl of sugar soup in her hands and walked to the window. With a flick of her hand, half the bowl of sugar soup was poured onto the ground in front of the window. "Young lady, really want to go to that Wulong Temple?" Bai Lu asked hesitantly. "Must go," Shen Miao answered. In her previous life, it was at this time that she inadvertently heard the maids of Rongjing Tang talking and knew that old Shen Furen had the intention to marry her to Prince Yu of the first rank. The night before going to Wulong Temple, she fled to Prince Ding's residence. Even though that decision was wrong, but by a freak combination of factors, another disaster was avoided. Now she did not escape nor hide and just followed to Wulong Temple. Whoever wanted to see her show, she would let that person become the worst show. Chapter 75. Earlier than what Shen Miao expected, on the second day, Mo Qing came to the Shen residence's gatehouse to be a guard. Shen Miao had previously let Shuang Zhang's side to stuff money into the gatekeeper and thought that it was Shuang Zhang's distant cousin. Because the guards were divided into several ranks, Mo Qing was to be the outermost guard, so he did not care much and stayed behind. Soon, 3 days had passed. In the early morning of the 3rd day, Ren Wanyun had already arranged everything and let the maid by her side, Xiang Lan, to instruct Shen Miao on some matters. Before setting off, everyone went to Rongjing Tang. Old Shinfuren said some words with a serious expression, most likely it was to make everyone follow the rules. On normal days they would not go to Wulong Temple to offer incense because Wulong Temple was slightly more remote. Even though it was famous, the incense offerings were not as vigorous as those in the nearby cities. But for some reason, this time, he had to give up what was near and seek what was far away. Shen Qing appeared to be extremely happy and said that she would definitely pay her respects to Buddha along with old Shinfuren and Shin Yuan Bo. Old Shinfuren heard it and her attitude towards Shen Qing was much gentler. Before leaving this time, he also brought along some bodyguards to ensure the safety of the young ladies of the Shin residence. Shin Miao stood in front of the carriage but did not move for a long time. When Ren Wanyun saw this, she frowned and asked, "Why is fifth lady not moving?" "It is just that the guards are a little thin and to prevent any accidents, second Shin might as well send more guards to follow," Shin Miao said. Ren Wanyun's brows wrinkled as she did not think that Shin Miao would raise this question at this time. But today everything had been arranged properly. Ren Wanyun smiled, "Fifth lady, we really brought quite a lot of manpower. We can't take all the guards of the Shin residence with us. If there are too many people, it would be more inconvenient. Let's just leave it like this." Shin Miao however stubbornly shook her head and did not move. When Shin Yu and Shin Qing saw this, Shin Yu did not say anything but Shin Qing was unhappy in her heart and followed up, "Our Shin residence is not some imperial family. How much extravagance does fifth younger sister want? I've never seen eldest uncle so picky when he goes out." She then took out Shin Xian and said. Just as her voice fell, Shin Miao glanced at her. That glance was as light as a feather, but it caused Shin Qing to suddenly feel a chill run down her spine. "Add 2 more. Shin Miao pointed to the 2 guards at the side of the door, "They will do." Seeing that Shin Miao did not bring much and only added 2 people, Ren Wanyun's heart was relieved as she did not want to waste too much time on this matter. 2 people would not be able to affect the overall situation, so she put on a difficult expression and Ren Wanyun said, "Fifth sister, you really..." "Never mind, when did second Shin not listen to you? Do as you please." She instructed Xiang Lan, who was beside her, "Go and call those 2 servants over, and follow us out of the city." "Many thanks to second Shin." Shin Miao's lips hooked up into a smile. Seeing that Ren Wanyun at the end still followed Shin Miao's idea, Shin Yu only looked at Shin Miao strangely but Shin Qing fiercely stomped her feet and glared at Shin Miao before turning to leave. After boarding the carriage, Shin Qing deliberately did not speak to Shin Miao. Even though Shin Yu spoke to Shin Miao, there was some probing in her words. Shin Miao was too lazy to deal with her and spoke perfunctorily. It was Ren Wanyun who was in high spirits along the way and spoke to Shin Miao about their childhood, looking extremely close. If it was in the past, most likely Shin Miao would also be filled with admiration towards this kind-looking second Shin, but now looking at this matron, every move and action was filled with pretentious ugliness. In front of her who was used to seeing all kinds of people in the inner palace, it was really not enough. Setting off in the morning, it was only until the evening that they finally reached their destination, Yangjing Peak. Wulong Temple was located halfway up the Yangjing Peak with high mountains and deep valleys. If one were to go for an outing here in spring, there would be birdsong and fragrant flowers everywhere, with lush foliage and the scenery was pleasing. But now that it was early autumn, the vegetation had withered and it added a bit of desolation. Because Yangjing Peak was too far away from the Ding capital, the road to Wulong Temple was not easy to walk on. Other than those pious Furin and Tai Tai, most people would not come here to offer incense. Shin Miao and the few of them got off the carriage and when they reached the entrance of Wulong Temple, they saw that outside the huge temple, there was only a little monk sweeping the floor and it looked very deserted. "It is rather quiet here." Shin Yu lightly laughed. Shin Qing wrinkled her nose and seemed to want to complain a little but suddenly thought of something and suppressed it. Ren Wanyun said, "Do not think that it is quiet here, one heard that the Buddha here is very efficacious. When one offers incense, one must be sincere." When the little monk saw them, he got up to welcome them. Other than the servants who were moving things down the carriage, Ren Wanyun and the rest followed the little monk who led the way into the temple. The more they walked into the temple, the more they felt that this Wulong temple was really sparsely populated. Not to mention the pilgrims, there were not many monks either. But the temple was spacious and as such, it felt empty. If one were to stay at night, one feared that it would be somewhat frightening. When they saw the abbot divided the courtyard for the few of them. Originally each young lady had a room and the distance was very close, but when it came to Shin Miao's side, a slightly younger middle-aged monk beside the abbot said, "Really sorry, there is no longer a room for young lady in the southern pavilion. If young lady does not mind, how about the northern pavilion?" Everyone looked at her and Shin Miao smiled, "Sorry, I mind it very much." Fifth lady. Ren Wanyun softly reprimanded, "This is a Buddhist Pure Land, how can it tolerate your willfulness? It is just that it is somewhat strange." Shin Miao was unmoved, the incense does not seem to be very strong, so why are there pavilions that are full? That middle-aged monk also frowned. Most likely he had never seen such an arrogant young lady who started to comment on the temple without any explanation. But Shin Miao was not like those unruly young ladies who made a fuss. With such a reasonable attitude, one could not answer. Little benefactor does not know that even though there are not many pilgrims, there are many monks in the temple. That old abbot gently smiled and explained to Shin Miao. "But I am somewhat afraid to live alone. What to do?" she asked. "This." Ren Wanyun was still comforting her, "Fifth lady, just put up with it for one night. If you are able to put up with it for one night, Buddha will see your sincerity and offer incense tomorrow and one's wish will come true." If it was in the past, Shin Miao would have been coaxed when she heard these words. After all, she was a person who was amenable to coaxing but not coercion, moreover there was still Fu Xiu Yi in her heart. One feared that for Buddha to realize her wish of being together with Fu Xiu Yi, she would also suffer a small loss. But now it was somewhat different. Ren Wanyun also had some headaches. She did not know why, but the current Shin Miao was becoming more and more thorny. In the past, Shin Miao would believe whatever she said and was very easy to coax. But today there were repeated mistakes, and if Shin Miao was not settled early, one feared that in the future there would be more headaches in the Shin residence. "Why not like this?" Shin Miao said with a smile, "How about Shin Shen and I stay in the northern pavilion? With someone accompanying, I will feel more at ease." Chapter 76. This. Ren Wanyun was somewhat hesitant. If she were to live together with Shin Miao and something happened to Shin Miao, it would be difficult for her to escape. Not waiting for her to think of a better idea, Shin Miao continued, "If Shin Shen is not willing, eldest sister and second older sister can squeeze in with me." Shin Yu's eyes flashed but did not speak. Even though Shin Qing did not know what arrangements her mother had, she could vaguely guess that this trip was targeted at Shin Miao. In addition, she was so disgusted with Shin Miao that she did not even want to pretend to be friendly, so she naturally said coldly, "I am used to living alone." "So?" Shin Miao slightly muttered to herself. "Then I will go to the northern pavilion with fifth lady." Shin Miao had not finished speaking when Ren Wanyun took the initiative to speak. She was afraid that Shin Miao would have any changes at this time and thought that it would be alright if they were to live together further away so that she would not be blamed for it. Shin Xian's heavens were high and the emperor was far away, so what she said would be the truth. Shin Miao smiled gently, "Then many thanks to second Shin Shen for accompanying." Her words were polite, but Ren Wanyun could not help but raise her eyebrows and instantly a face full of smiles appeared. "We are all one family." After solving the problem of living, the next step was to pack up. Because Shin Qing and Shin Yu said that they were somewhat tired, they did not eat together. It was brought to the room by the servants. Upon reaching the northern pavilion, without waiting for Ren Wanyun to speak, Shin Miao said, "I also feel very tired and will not eat together with second Shen and return to the room first." Ren Wanyun was surprised for a moment before smiling, "Then it will be up to you." If one is tired, then rest early. Shen Miao nodded her head in agreement. When the little monk who led the way brought Shen Miao and her servants to the room, Shen Miao could not help but sigh. Indeed, in Wulong Temple, such a desolate and simple temple, this room was particularly elegant. There was a small forest at the side and it was quite secluded. Even though the furnishings in the room were simple, it was exquisite everywhere. It made one's heart feel happy upon seeing it. The scenery here is really beautiful. Gu Yu was somewhat surprised. Replying to benefactor, this room is only for distinguished guests of the temple. The residents' furon instructed to leave the distinguished room for benefactor. The little monk lowered his head and said, "Help me thank Second Shen for her good intentions." Shen Miao said lightly. However, his eyes were looking around. This was the innermost room of the northern pavilion. In other words, under the beautiful scenery, this place was almost completely isolated. Even if someone were to shout, it would be useless. It was rare that they even sealed the way out for her. As for the exquisite decoration of this room, it was probably just to make it convenient for that person to enjoy. What incense is this? Jing Zhe picked up the few sticks of incense on the table and sniffed it. It is somewhat like orchids but more fragrant than orchids. Her eyes landed on the orchid-shaped incense burner. This incense burner is really unique. When Gu Yu saw it, she also smiled. It seems that the temple had specially inquired about it. Young lady would light the incense before going to bed. When young lady is tired at night, one would light it before going to bed. I can also sleep soundly at night. Now one feel that this Wulong temple is not bad. Jing Zhe joked, no wonder even though it is deep in the mountains, Second Furon still had to come over to pray. Shen Miao's brows slightly wrinkled and walked over to the small table. She took the incense from Jing Zhe's hands and sniffed it. After sniffing it, her brows wrinkled even tighter. When the two maids saw it, they asked hesitantly, "Young lady, is there something wrong with this incense?" In Shen Miao's heart, ever since she entered Wulong Temple, she had never let go of her heart. The more appropriate this place was, the more she could see the danger. She indeed had the habit of using incense before going to bed. Moreover, females would always like exquisite things. That incense burner was made pitifully and adorably. Just to play with it, normal females would light incense to match the quiet and elegant environment. But for her, it was not the case. The surviving females in the inner palace would use all kinds of means to climb up. Shen Miao had been the mistress of the 6 palaces for so many years in her previous life, so naturally she had a little bit of eyesight. She had seen a lot of these shady methods and things. As for the aphrodisiac in the incense, it was something that the concubines played with. If she was an ordinary unmarried young lady, naturally she would not have heard of such a thing. Not a good thing. Her hand loosened and that incense fell onto the small table. Gu Yu and Jing Zhe were shocked and looked at each other. After a moment, Jing Zhe said, "Then I throw this thing out?" "No need." Shen Miao's eyes landed on the small table. Ren Wanyun and that person had spent so much effort to prepare a good gift for her. If these methods were wasted, it would be a pity. Her lips suddenly broke into a sneer, "Keep it. There will be a need for it." In another room far away from Shen Miao's room, Ren Wanyun was sitting in front of the couch and in front of her stood a stooped old woman. It was not anyone else but Gue Momo. "You also know about tonight's matter. After success, there will naturally be benefits for you, but if it is a failure..." Ren Wanyun lightly snorted, "You know what the result would be without me saying it." When she spoke, there was no trace of her usual amiable appearance and her eyes made one feel cold. Gue Momo smiled flatteringly, "Furon, rest assured. Leave everything to this old servant. This old servant will naturally not make any mistakes when doing things. It is expected that everything will go smoothly tonight." Ren Wanyun's expression then eased up, "Naturally I trust you. After all, you are the closest person to Fifth Lady. We are doing this for the Shen residents. When fifth lady becomes sensible in the future, she will know the pros and cons and naturally know that you are doing it for her good and will not treat you badly. Gue Momo nodded her head in agreement, but her heart was filled with disdain. In the future, when Shen Miao knew about this matter, it would be strange if she did not hate her to death. How would she think that it was for her good? Thinking of what would happen tonight, Gue Momo could not help but feel somewhat frightened. She did not expect that this eldest Shen Furen, who always had a kind face, would actually think of such a vicious method. After all, if this matter landed on any unmarried female, it would be a life worse than death for the rest of their lives. In the next moment, she saw Ren Wanyun giving Kai Ju a look, and Kai Ju smiled as she took a sachet over and stuffed it into Gue Momo's hands. This time one will have to trouble Gue Momo to take care of it. Gue Momo pinched it and found that the weight of the sachet was not light. A smile immediately blossomed on her face as she said, "Guaranteed that Furen will be satisfied." After saying a few more words, Gue Momo then got up and left. "Furen really want to rest here tonight?" Xiang Lan asked. "This is after all the same as fifth young lady's room." "No matter." Ren Wanyun waved her hands without much care. "Tomorrow morning it will be what I say. Perhaps when eldest Bo returns, it is unknown if there is still such a person in the world, so there is nothing to be afraid of." She smiled somewhat fiercely. "Eldest Bo, eldest Saw, who asked you to block my Chinga's path?"